Chapter 686. Yes. So pitiful. Both of their mouths were saying pitiful people, but there was no trace of emotion on their faces. Shin Miao had a long hatred towards the first household of the Shin family, and with the blood debt from the previous lifetime, it was not too much to do so. But Shin Dongling was different. Even though in the early years Shi and Wan Yinyang were suppressed by Ren Wanyun until they were transparent people in the Shin residence, Shin Dongling had never shown any trace of dissatisfaction, and it was because of this that this kind of performance made one's heart turn cold. A few heads rolled down the stage into the crowd, and there were cries of alarm from the crowd. The timid females had already covered their eyes and screamed. Because this family of Shin residents was a sinner, the corpses could not be collected and it had to be dealt with by the higher-ups. To say to deal with, it was more like burning it clean. Seeing the movements of the officials moving the corpses, Shin Dongling seemed to have lost interest and smiled at Shin Miao. Originally in the residence, because my health was not good, I did not walk around with fifth younger sister. Now that I am married, it is even more inconvenient. But my heart is still thinking about fifth younger sister. If fifth younger sister is interested in another day, why not come over to the Wang residence for a visit? It will be good for us sisters to have some intimate words. Shin Qiu was listening at the side and his brows wrinkled up. He could not say how much he liked Shin Dongling as a person, especially when something happened to Shin Wan's side. Even Shin Yu and Shin Roqiu were not spared, but the married Shin Dongling was safe and sound. Of course she was a Shu daughter and perhaps she did not need to be so calculative, but it seemed that the Wang family was dealing with her. A timid person, but let her husband's family who had just married her to run circles around her. Shin Qiu was not a fool and felt that Shin Dongling was not as simple as she looked on the surface. Especially now that he saw that Shin Dongling was delicate and charming but had a cold temperament, he was even more displeased, not to mention to let Shin Miao get close to her. When Shin Miao heard it, she only smiled indifferently and asked back, looking at third older sister's appearance, young Master Wang treats third older sister very well. Shin Dongling lowered her head in embarrassment. The Wang family is kind. Shin Miao smiled coldly. The Wang family was kind. That might not be the case. Regardless of whether the Wang family was kind or not, Shin Dongling would not be that kind. She did not pay much attention to Shin Dongling in the past life, as under Ren Wanyun's suppression. Shin Dongling would not dare to be a demon like this, but she had the same temperament as Fu Xiuyi and was good at hiding. One did not know that after Shin Miao's death in the future battles, Shin Dongling would have the upper hand. Since that's the case, it's your fortune. Shin Miao said lightly, we still have some matters and will not disturb third older sister's enjoyment. Shin Dongling hurriedly bade farewell and said, take care, fifth sister. Shin Miao did not want to speak more with her and took the lead to take a step and leave. Shin Qiu had a faint expression as he nodded his head in farewell. Luo Tan and Luo Ling quickly followed. After Shin Miao and entourage left, Shin Dongling's personal maid, Xinghua, pouted her lips in indignation. Originally Xinghua also had a somewhat foolish temperament, but now that she followed Shin Dongling into the Wang family and became the head maid of the dowry, and her mistress was also the young mistress, she straightened her back a little and was not as cautious as before and even a little arrogant. Xinghua grumbled, Furin treated fifth young lady in such a good manner, but fifth young lady did not appreciate it. It is really unreasonable. She is the D and I am a Shu, so naturally one would look down on one. Shin Dongling was not as angry as Xinghua. But you are now the young mistress of the Wang family, one cannot be like how it was in the past. Moreover, in the future when fifth young lady marries, one would not even have a sister and one would be a joke. One would not fawn over Furin but be so cold. One fear that one would not be able to beg in the future. Chapter 687. Shin Dongling smiled faintly. It is only a young mistress of the Wang family and is not worth mentioning in other people's eyes. Why is there a need to curry favor? Xinghua said unhappily, you are a proper official's Furin. Who would fifth young lady marry in the future? Could it be that she wants to marry a prince? Her reputation was already ruined a few years ago, so who would dare to marry from a good family? Xinghua. It seemed that she felt that the maid's words were too much and Shin Dongling frowned. Xinghua quickly kept quiet and did not dare to say more as her expression was still unjust. What is reputation? Shin Dongling said softly, with the backing of the Shin family army this big tree and the Luo family army this soil, even if you were to marry the current son of heaven, no one would be able to stop her. It's just that. Shin Dongling smiled meaningfully, it is not good to marry high up. At the other end, Luo Tan was pestering Shin Miao to ask, youngest Biao sister, is that your Shu younger sister? From what I see, she is not as weak as what others say, like a transparent person. Previously, when Luo Tan came to the Ding capital, she was afraid that she did not recognize the people in the Shin residence and specially inquired about the temperament of the masters of each household. Regarding Shin Dongling, there was the least information because this third young lady had such a transparent person's temperament and would not leave the courtyard all day and was very lowly. Luo Tan was still sighing in her heart. Because the younger generation of the Luo family were all mischievous, especially Luo Tan and Luo Qian, this pair of siblings, thus she really could not imagine Shin Dongling's life. Who knew that upon seeing today, it was not like what the servants said. Shin Dongling was completely different from what she imagined. Shin Miao smiled. People will always change. Luo Tan thought for a moment and agreed, that's right. Now that she is married, her husband's family likes her, that's why she has changed. She then sighed, it's really hard to be the same person as before. Shin Miao was somewhat amused by her attitude. Shin Xiu asked, younger sister, after watching the execution, can one return to the residence now? In the end, he still had lingering fears about Shin Miao being inexplicably kidnapped. Just as Shin Miao was about to answer, she suddenly heard a clear voice, older sister Shin. Shin Miao looked back. The person who came was a young master who looked like he was carved out of jade. He wore a pine green satin robe, and pine leaves were embroidered on the edges of his robe. It was very unique. This young master was about 11 or 12 years old, and could already be considered a young boy. His features were also very handsome, but for some reason there was a hint of childishness to them. Even though one could only wear a crown when one was 20 years old, he still wore a small jade crown with 2 ribbons hanging beside his ears. At his waist was a gourd made of jade. White and tender, she was so cute that she looked like someone who had walked out of a painting. Luo Tan's eyes stared straight. All the children in the Shaochun city were all naughty monkeys, how could there be such cute and beautiful ones? Moreover, the decent actions made people's hearts melt. Even Luo Tan, who had no patience for children, was attracted to this young boy, let alone others. Luo Ling and Shin Qiu were somewhat surprised as this youth seemed to be rather familiar with Shin Miao. Shin Miao frowned and felt that there was some familiarity between the young boy's brows, but she could not think of who it was. That young boy originally thought that Shin Miao would quickly call out his name, but did not expect that Shin Miao would only look at him in a daze. Thus he walked over to Shin Miao's side. He was not as tall as Shin Miao and had to raise his head slightly, thus he stared at Shin Miao. Just when Shin Miao wanted to say something to break the silence, she heard a chuckle from the side. 5th Shin young lady, eldest Shin young master. The person who came was wearing a lake blue robe and the style of the clothes was exactly the same as the young boy in front, but this person was much older than the young boy. He had the appearance of a youth and his brows and eyes were similar to the young master. The brows were handsome and the smile was elegant. Shin Miao and Shin Xiu knew this person. It was Su Ming Feng from the residence of the Count of Ping Nan. Chapter 688. Second younger brother is mischievous and not sensible. One hoped that he did not offend 5th young lady. Su Ming Feng smiled. Shin Miao almost bit off her own tongue. That little gentleman looked at her somewhat angrily and Shin Miao asked, Su Ming Lang? 2 years of not seeing each other and you do not recognize me? Su Ming Lang said angrily, did you not say that you would bring me a gift when you return? Shin Miao only felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. 2 years ago, Su Ming Lang was still a plump glutinous rice dumpling. He could not be considered handsome or beautiful. At most he was fair and tender like the one in front of her. But 2 years had passed. Who was this handsome young man in front of her now? Why did he lose so much weight? It was said that a female changes 18 times from womanhood, a male also changes 18 times from womanhood? Su Ming Lang was still sulking. Luo Tan at the side could not help but touch Su Ming Lang's head. Luo Tan liked good-looking things and was extremely curious to see such a good-looking little gentleman like Su Ming Lang. Now looking at Su Ming Feng, she was outspoken and said carelessly, worthy to be 2 brothers. Both are equally good-looking. Su Ming Lang's mind was on the matter of Shin Miao not recognizing him. It was Su Ming Lang who had never met such a straightforward female before. After being praised like this, he could not help but not know whether to laugh or cry. Shin Qiu and Luo Ling also quickly greeted the 2 brothers. Shin Miao looked at Su Ming Lang and smiled, the gift is in my residence and will be sent over to you. Ever since she followed Shin Xian back to the Ding capital, there were all sorts of trivial matters and Su Ming Lang was really forgotten by her. She also did not see Su Ming Lang and now that Su Ming Lang seemed to have changed into another person, she could not help but sigh with emotion. Perhaps a child's body was growing and would change every day. Thinking about Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she was still a little big when she left, and when she returned she almost could not recognize them. Su Ming Lang was someone who did not hold a grudge, and when he heard that, his dissatisfaction was swept away. Su Ming Lang asked, "Is older Shin's sister here to go shopping?" Su Ming Feng smiled awkwardly. He naturally knew that today was the day of the Shin family's execution. Originally the first household and second household of the Shin family were not on good terms. Not far from here was the execution ground, so it was assumed that Shin Miao was here to observe the ceremony. But these words could not be said to his second younger brother. Shin Miao said, casually strolling around, "Now it is time to return to the residence." Su Ming Lang obediently nodded his head, "Then remember to give me a present." Su Ming Feng gave him a slap on the back of his head, and Su Ming Lang covered his head and glared at him. She then turned her head to look at Shin Miao and was about to bid farewell to Shin Miao when her eyes suddenly froze and pointed to the bracelet on Shin Miao's wrist. "Shin, older sister, this jade bracelet of yours looks like the tiger head bracelet that older brother Xie made." Everyone was taken aback by his words. Shin Qiu and Luo Ling did not know about the tiger head bracelet, and Luo Tan was somewhat curious, but Shin Miao had a guilty conscience. Su Ming Lang said it naively but saw Su Ming Feng frowning. On that snow-white wrist, there was indeed a jade bracelet. The quality of the jade was very good. Its entire body was emerald green, like a spiritual plant that grew deep in the mountains. However, there wasn't just one jade bracelet. It was actually split into two at the head like a pair of double bracelets. There were no traces of carving on it, and it was natural. There was only a small tiger head carved on the protruding part of the head. Even though Shin Miao felt that it was like a cat. That was one of the jewelry pieces that Xie Jingxing had sent over. Shin Miao originally felt that those jewelry were either rich or expensive, and each had their own strong points. If it was possible, it would be good to wear all of them. Who knew that when Guyu saw it, she said, "Young lady cannot wear all of these on the body. These jewelry are too expensive. It needs to be matched with gorgeous clothes. If it is simple, it would appear nondescript." Chapter 689. Shin Miao was discouraged. Xie Jingxing did not lack money, but after gifting so many expensive-looking jewelry, could it be that she had to specially buy a batch of gorgeous clothes for these jewelry? Even if she bought it, she would find it cumbersome to wear. After thinking about it, he felt that this jade bracelet was the simplest. There were needles hidden inside, so it looked relatively simple. Even so, Luo Shuiyan still praised the water quality. It could only be said that Xie Jingxing's gift was the same as him, not knowing how to be low-key. While she was slightly distracted, Su Ming Feng's expression became solemn, and before Shin Miao could react, he held Shin Miao's hands and said, "One have offended." Shin Miao subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but Su Ming Feng held it very tightly. Moreover, he did not directly hold Shin Miao's wrist, and there was a layer of sleeve separating it, making the posture very strange. Shin Qiu and Luo Ling's eyes turned cold at the same time. Shin Qiu said, "Gentleman Su, you are too impetuous." Su Ming Lang's eyes widened. This was probably the first time he heard someone say that his big brother was rash. But Su Ming Feng quickly released his hands and cupped his hands towards Shin Miao. Just now this one was rude. Apologies. After all, he did not do anything, so Shin Miao would not mind about these. She just did not know what Su Ming Feng had discovered. In the next moment, she heard Su Ming Feng asking, "One dare to ask, fifth young lady, where did this tiger head bracelet come from?" Shin Miao's heart thumped, and Luo Tan and the rest were already dumbfounded. Su Ming Feng was a dignified male. Why would he ask where did the accessories on a female's hands came from? Even Su Ming Lang's gaze towards Su Ming Feng was somewhat strange. Su Ming Feng was unmoved and still looked at Shin Miao seriously, as if he was very insistent on waiting for Shin Miao's answer. Shin Miao regained her senses and smiled. "I bought it from a traveling merchant who came from afar. He said that it was an imported product. I did not expect Master Su to recognize it. Is this bracelet called the tiger head bracelet?" Su Ming Feng's expression was somewhat disappointed for a moment, but in a moment he picked himself up and said, "Correct. It is called tiger head hoop. Is fifth miss willing to part with this tiger head bracelet and sell it to me?" Cough cough. Luo Tan choked on her own saliva. The people in the Ding capital were so strange that the handsome youth in front of them actually liked to buy female jewelry. It was said that some rich families had some strange hobbies. For example, some people liked to collect women's undergarments, and some people liked to put on women's rouge. It seemed that young Master Su liked women's jewelry. "Su Ming Lang, eldest brother, do you want to buy this tiger head bracelet for a young lady?" Upon hearing this, Shen Qiu and Luo Ling instantly understood, and Luo Tan was also surprised. So it was not that she liked it but wanted to buy it for her beloved young lady. As Shen Miao's thoughts turned, she smiled slightly and said, "This is after all my personal jewelry. No matter if it is bought, sold or gifted, it would not be appropriate for it to be in the hands of an outsider. If you won it won. Ling Chin Su I of Ling of Chin of I that. I and I. Shin that she. Shin had she and said. Even to. If I give my own jewelry to an outsider, what would others think? No way. Shin Qiu also nodded his head, correct. This matter concerned his younger sister's reputation. Not a single jewelry could go wrong. Su Mingfeng could only smile awkwardly. Since that is the case, then one can only regret. After saying a few more polite words, Su Mingfeng brought Su Minglang to bid farewell to Shin Miao and entourage. Just as they were about to leave, Su Mingfeng suddenly thought of something and looked at Shin Miao. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Has fifth young lady seen the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and the Xie family?" Chapter 690. Shin Miao was startled, and the few people around her were also startled. Everyone knew that Xie Jingxing had been dead for 2 years. Was this Su Mingfeng crazy? Shin Miao laughed in spite of herself. How can I see that the little marquis of the Xie family died young? Does young Master Su have some prejudice against me and is sincerely cursing me? Su Mingfeng no longer said anything, and this time he really brought Su Minglang far away. When the crowd could no longer see both of their figures, Luo Tan then touched her shoulders and said, "Have goosebumps all over. Youngest Biao sister, why would that person ask you if you have seen a dead person without rhyme or reason?" Shin Miao said, "He must be possessed." "I think so too." Luo Tan deeply agreed. Shin Qiu frowned, less contact with the Su family in the future. What did he say that Shin Miao had seen a dead person, and where did she see it? Why did he want to see it? For no rhyme or reason one would get a body full of bad luck. But why did he ask you? Luo Tan asked curiously, could it be that youngest Biao sister and that little Marquis Xie have any friendship? Absolutely no connection and do not have any contact. Shin Miao answered with 8 words. Luo Ling looked at her in surprise. What Shin Miao did not know was that on this day Su Mingfeng, who saw the tiger head bracelet on her wrist, was restless the entire day. Even Su Yu also sensed that something was wrong with Su Mingfeng and even asked him what was wrong. Now the Count of Pingnan's Su family had tried their best to keep a low profile, and everyone knew that the court was in a turbulent situation and one should not get involved in the muddy waters. Now the Su family was used to such carefree days, and Su Mingfeng did not enter officialdom, so who was he showing a straight face to? When Su Mingfeng ate, he only vaguely said a few words and hastily took 2 bites before returning to his room. Su Yu and Su Furen looked at each other in dismay. Su Furen asked, "What is wrong with him?" Su Yu shook his head. Su Furen simply asked her youngest son, Su Minglang, "Minglang, who did you meet with when you went out with your eldest brother today?" Su Minglang said heartlessly as he picked up the food, "One met with older sister Shin." Older brother asked older sister Shin for jewelry, but older sister Shin did not give. Older sister Shin said that it was against the rules and older brother was not happy. Madame Su and Su Yu gasped. Su Minglang's words were without rhyme or reason, but in their ears, it was that Su Mingfeng was close to the young lady of the Shin family, and the young lady of the Shin family felt that her reputation was damaged and Su Mingfeng was angry. Su Furen put down her chopsticks and asked, "Let me ask you, the older sister of the Shin family that you mentioned, is it the 5th young lady of the Shin family?" Now that the 2nd and 3rd household of the Shin family were executed, naturally it would not be Shin Yu. Shin Qing had died 2 years ago. Shin Dongling had exchanged marriage to the Wang family, and the unmarried Shin family's older sister was Shin Miao. Forgive Su Furen for thinking of the formidable great general's Shin family first, since the Shin family was the most famous in the Ding capital. Su Minglang nodded his head hard. This time Su Yu could no longer sit still. He pointed at Su Minglang with a trembling finger and said, "Your big brother is asking for jewelry?" Su Minglang's head nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. The couple looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Logically speaking, Su Mingfeng would be 23 soon after the new year, and normal people would have already gotten married and would have a son earlier. But one did not know what was wrong with their own family's head that he was not willing to marry. In the early years there was Xie Jingxing from the residence of the Marquis of Lin and who followed Su Mingfeng. Suyu was not worried at all as he knew that Xie Jingxing was someone who amused young ladies and it would not be wrong to follow the Xie Jingxing. Once Xie Jingxing died, his own son could directly become a monk. In these 2 years he did not see anyone who was interested in any young lady. No matter if one had high standards or not, if this carried on, the Su family's husband and wife would suspect that Su Mingfeng was gay. Chapter 691. Now hearing Su Minglang say that both husband and wife were half gratified and half in a difficult position. She was gratified that Su Mingfeng was still a normal male and liked females. The difficult thing was that Su Mingfeng took a fancy to any family's young lady, but it was Shen Xian's daughter. Shen Xian held great power in his hands, and by marrying Shen Xian, if one day Emperor Hui was prepared to deal with Shen Xian, the Su family would also be unlucky. Could it be that he had managed to escape from one pit of fire with great difficulty, but now he was going to jump into another pit of fire? Just thinking about it gave him a headache. It was still Su Furen who was considerate and said, "Don't be anxious, Minglang's words are unclear. If Mingfeng really liked the young lady of the Shen family, he would definitely express it. Jin Feng, go and call all the servants in eldest young master's courtyard. I have something to ask them." In the room, Su Mingfeng was pacing back and forth. He was not mistaken. Even if it was only for a short period of time, it was enough for him to see and feel clearly. The jade bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist was obviously the tiger head bracelet. There were a total of 2 tiger head bracelets. One was in the hands of Princess Rong Xan and the other appeared on Shen Miao's wrist. Su Mingfeng had always thought that the second one would not appear because Xie Jingxing was dead. Under the heavens, only Xie Jingxing knew how to make tiger head bracelets. At that time, Su Mingfeng and Xie Jingxing were still miserably green youths who walked around Mahjong Tai. One day she saw Xie Jingxing holding something that looked like a bracelet and rubbed it and even ridiculed him. In fact, he was very curious in his heart. Su Mingfeng understood Xie Jingxing. Even though Xie Jingxing was handsome and beautiful and frivolous, he had no interest in these gorgeous ornaments, not to mention female items. Under his curiosity, Su Mingfeng asked and Xie Jingxing rolled his eyes at him and only said that it was a concealed weapon. Afterwards Su Mingfeng pestered Xie Jingxing until he was impatient, so Xie Jingxing showed him that the bracelet was made into 2 bracelets that were connected together. There were hidden weapons inside and there were poisonous needles that could be used for self-defense. Su Mingfeng felt that it was very interesting and wanted it. Xie Jingxing despised, "This is for females to use. Who are you wearing this bracelet for?" Su Mingfeng then quieted down. Afterwards one saw Xie Jingxing giving the bracelet to Princess Rong Xen. Ever since the death of Princess Yuqin, Princess Rong Xen doted on Xie Jingxing very much and Xie Jingxing had a deep relationship with her, so it was understandable for him to be gifted to Princess Rong Xen. Why was it called the tiger head hoop? It was because Xie Jingxing carved a tiger's head on it that his carving skills were not flattering as it was as ugly as a dog's. Su Mingfeng kept on ridiculing but Princess Rong Xen liked it very much. Xie Jingxing became interested and said that he wanted to carve another one. However, that jade material was very difficult to find, so he had not been able to find it. It was until 2 years ago when Su Mingfeng found a piece from the hands of a wealthy merchant, but the jade material was not as good as the previous one. There were shallow white marks, but one could still see it if one looked at it seriously. Before Xie Jingxing set off, he took that piece of jade and said that if he was bored along the way he would make a tiger head bracelet. Who knew that once he left he would be separated forever. As for the tiger head bracelet on Shen Miao's hand, there were faint white marks on the jadeite material under the sunlight. It was the same mechanism, the same workmanship, and that ugly carving was exactly the same as Xie Jingxing's. Xie Jingxing left the capital 2 years ago and Shen Xan went to the northwest region 2 years ago. Shen Xan left first and Xie Jingxing left after that, and when Xie Jingxing left, he still had that piece of jade material. Could it be that Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing had met each other in these 2 years? But at that time Xie Jingxing was already dead. Moreover, the carving on the bracelet was not old and seemed to be polished not long ago as it was not smooth enough. Su Mingfeng's heart was thumping and he raised his hand to summon his servant. Call a few people to guard at the entrance of Shen Xian's residence and observe the movements of the 5th Shen young lady. It is also good to bribe the servants in the Shen mansion. I want to know every move of the 5th Shen young lady. Su Mingfeng naturally did not know how much of a shock his words would cause to Master Su and Su Furen's ears. Heavens! Su Yu said, Mingfeng really has deep feelings for this female. I originally thought that no matter how one looked at Mingfeng, he would not do such a rash action like snatching others' jewelry. One thought that it was Ming Lang speaking nonsense and did not think that it was true. Su Forin's head hurt and she drank a mouthful of tea before saying, "How is it that he was so reserved previously but now it is like a different person? Still bribing others informants. This is not the way to chase a young lady. What is the difference between him and those brats outside who cannot be seen in public? Perhaps it is because of his good feelings." Su Yu somewhat sighed. "This child is like me, long affections." Su Forin rolled her eyes at him. "According to this, if one does not let Ming Feng marry, would Ming Feng not die of disgust? One must first send an invitation to the Shin residence." "Send an invitation for what?" Su Yu was puzzled. "What else can it be? To find a wife for your son." Su Forin's words were shocking. Chapter 692. The wind blew in the night and it was unusually cold. In the residence of Prince Rue, Gao Yang was reading a letter that was delivered with relish. Shin Miao lived in the Shin mansion, and even though there were many soldiers in the Shin family and the guards were not weak, due to various reasons, there were still dangers lurking around and one did not dare to relax. Xie Jingxing transferred a secret guard from the MOU army to quietly follow Shin Miao, so as to avoid any accidents. This secret guard called Song Yang was originally a spy in the MOU army. His skills were top-notch and his information gathering was also top-notch. It was just that he had a problem, which was that he was a chatterbox. Every day he would report to Xie Jingxing what Shin Miao did, and in this letter it was written who Shin Miao saw today and what she said. Basically, other than going to the toilet and bathing, everything else was written in detail. Gao Yang felt that this was quite abnormal, but Song Yang was such a cautious person. When he saw that Shin Miao and entourage met Su Ming Feng on the streets in the afternoon, his expression changed. Even though he did not know what Su Ming Feng had discovered, but Su Ming Feng and Xie Jingxing had such a long friendship and this kind of strange action was not good. Just as he was thinking about it, Ji Yushu passed by from the back while biting an apple. When he saw Gao Yang in a daze with a piece of paper, he took a glance, but the main point was skewed. He said, "Ah, so that Biao young lady of the Shin family likes Su Ming Feng." Gao Yang was so shocked by Gao Yang that he almost fell off the stone bench. When he recovered to his senses, he said angrily, "What is the fuss for? You are too timid." Ji Yushu patted his shoulder. "Don't use your fan all day long. Practicing martial arts is the right way." Finishing, he returned to the original topic. Young Lady Luo and young Master Su are quite compatible, and third older brother has a relationship with both sides. Why not be a matchmaker on another day? Gao Yang frowned. "Which eyes of yours saw that they are compatible? Moreover, who said that Luo Tan likes Su Ming Feng?" "Both my eyes saw that they are compatible," Ji Yushu said and pointed to a line of words on the letter to Gao Yang. "You see, young Lady Luo said to Su Ming Feng, worthy of being two brothers, both are equally good-looking. Let's not talk about Su Ming Lang, but young Lady Luo was using this method to express goodwill to Su Ming Feng. Otherwise, why would you praise someone for being good-looking?" Luckily, Song Yang was a chatterbox, and not only did he write Shin Miao's words, he also included Luo Tan's words. Ji Yushu was considered to be a talent, as he was able to see this sentence in such a full page of paper. Gao Yang suppressed the slight displeasure in his heart and said, "Boring. You don't understand." Ji Yushu snatched the fan from Gao Yang's hands and imitated Gao Yang's unfathomable manner as he waved it and said with an "I am the smartest" look, "Only this young master who has seen all kinds of flowers can see the true heart of a young female. What do you know? If you fawn on me, I can consider teaching you." Achoo. In the cold winter, Feng Ji Yushu sneezed as he was fanning himself. Gao Yang snatched the fan back and ignored him. Just as they were talking, Xie Jingxing came back from outside, followed by Tai Yi and Nan Qi. It was unknown where they came from, but they looked travel-worn. "Third older brother." Ji Yushu greeted him warmly, but Xie Jingxing did not even look at him and walked into the room with a cold face. Nan Qi and Tai Yi also had a solemn expression. Ji Yushu did not notice that Xie Jingxing was in a bad mood and continued, "Third older brother, something happened to fifth Shin young lady." Xie Jingxing's footsteps paused and frowned as he looked at him. Gao Yang also looked at Ji Yushu. Ji Yushu cleared his throat and said seriously, "Just looked at the news that Song Yang sent back for you. Today when fifth Shin young lady went out, she met with a lecher, and that lecher touched fifth Shin young lady's little hand." Chapter 693. Gao Yang face-bombed and heard Ji Yushu asking again, "Does third older brother know who is this audacious lecher?" Naturally, no one responded to him. causing Nanqi and Tai Yi to be extremely nervous. Fifth Shin young lady was the person that their master fancied, so who had the guts to actually touch Fifth Shin young lady's hand? Jiu Shu said heartbreakingly, "It is Su Ming Feng." It was third older brother's sworn brother, Su Ming Feng. We're all brothers, yet he actually tried to steal third brother's woman. How heartless, unjust, and shameless. Nanqi and Tai Yi were stunned, Xie Jingxing's eyes were cold, and Gao Yang simply used his fan to cover his face. He did not want to see Jiu Shu's demonic behavior in front of so many people. The lamp was as small as a bean, and Shin Miao was bored to death reading under the lamp. From time to time she would raise her eyes to look at the windows. In the cold weather the windows were wide open. Shin Miao guessed that Xie Jingxing had planted people in the Shin mansion, but she did not care. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan usually did not work in the residence, much less Shin Qiu. There were no secrets in the Shin mansion, so it would not matter if Xie Jingxing's people came. Moreover, there was an additional person to guard the door, so one could just treat it as a free guard. Since Xie Jingxing's people were paying attention to every move at this end, the action of opening the window should be reported to his master that she had something to wait for Xie Jingxing. Shin Miao thought left and right and felt that it was not a good thing to meet Su Ming Feng on the streets today. Su Ming Feng and Xie Jingxing's relationship was very good. One had to know that when Su Ming Feng died, only Xie Jingxing dared to collect his corpse and was not afraid of the wrath of the imperial family of Mingqi, thus one knew that both of them were best friends. Since they were best friends, they understood each other. Today Su Ming Feng noticed her bracelet and said that it was a tiger head bracelet. It was definitely not something that was said casually and definitely had some relation with Xie Jingxing. Shin Miao also did not know how many people in Mingqi knew about Xie Jingxing's identity. But seeing Su Ming Feng's performance today, Su Ming Feng did not know about it. If Su Ming Feng knew that Xie Jingxing did not die, one did not know if there would be trouble in the future. As he was lost in his thoughts, he heard a sound from the window. He looked up and saw that the purple-robed young man had already entered the room with ease. He even closed the window to prevent the wind from blowing in. Xie Jingxing strode over and sat in front of the table. The tea on the table was still warm and not cold. Xie Jingxing poured himself a cup of tea. It was so familiar that it was as if he was in his own house. Shin Miao ignored the strange feeling in her heart and also drank a mouthful of tea before saying, "Today I am looking for you because of a matter." "What is it?" Xie Jingxing curled his lips and asked. After hesitating for a moment, Shin Miao then said, "Su Ming Feng might have sensed that you are still alive." Xie Jingxing was silent. Shin Miao stretched out her wrist, and the jade bracelet on her wrist was lustrous and translucent, making her wrist look even more slender and fair. She said, "Today Su Ming Feng saw this bracelet on my hand on the streets and said something about tiger head bracelet, and asked if I have seen you before. I think that there should be some origin. Perhaps he also guessed that you are still alive." Xie Jingxing frowned slightly. He was originally born well, but his usual smile that was not a smile made one feel intoxicated. At this moment when he did not speak, one would feel a cold feeling hitting one's face. Shin Miao thought that Xie Jingxing was now a great Liang person, and with the identity of Prince Rui, he had to wear a silver mask so that others would not discover his true identity. Who knew that her negligence would be detected by Su Ming Feng? Even if Su Ming Feng was Xie Jingxing's good friend, it was inevitable that he would be used by others. If it brought trouble to Xie Jingxing had helped her so much and she would be giving trouble to Xie Jingxing. Shin Miao's heart felt a little guilty. She deliberated, why not? Think of a way to remedy it. Chapter 694. Impossible. Xie Jingxing flatly rejected her proposal. Su Ming Feng and I have known each other for many years, and his character is cunning and intelligent. It cannot be hidden. Shin Miao had a headache, but her heart was somewhat blaming Xie Jingxing. Since this tiger head bracelet had such a history, then one should not casually give it to others, alright? Unfortunately she was wearing that tiger head bracelet today, thus Su Ming Feng happened to see it. Then what should be done? Even if Shin Miao was intelligent, she did not know what to do. Everyone had their own specialties. She didn't know how to conceal her identity. Xie Jingxing shook his head. So be it if discovered. No need to bother about it. Will this not bring you trouble? Shin Miao frowned and asked. The Su family is after all an official family of Mingqi, and you are a great Liang person. Perhaps he would think that you are a spy sent by the enemy country. There will be endless troubles. It was not that Shin Miao thought badly of others, but it was like this. For a little benefit, the sisters in the inner palace would kill each other, not to mention that this was related to the interests of the two countries. The friendship between friends was the most precious, thus it could not tolerate deception and was the most fragile. Xie Jingxing slowly looked at her and his lips suddenly curled up as he said, "Are you worried about me?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment before saying, "I am concerned about myself." She paused before adding another sentence, "I am now on the same boat as you. If you were to be discovered, it is difficult to guarantee that I would not be dragged out and the Shen family would also be dragged down. The gains do not make up for the losses." Xie Jingxing found it somewhat funny. "Do not worry. One will not lose out by being allies with this prince." Shen Miao was used to his arrogance and did not put his words to heart. It was just that she suddenly thought of something and said, "Speaking of which, you really do not intend to stop Su Mingfeng? How long do you think I need to wear my mask?" Xie Jingxing suddenly asked. Shen Miao did not understand his meaning and did not speak. "Sooner or later my identity will be known." Xie Jingxing lightly said, "If it is not Su Mingfeng, it would be others." Shen Miao was shocked and somewhat puzzled before asking, "Then have you ever thought that if your identity was known your loved ones would think? The Marquis of Lin and Princess Rong Xen, Su Mingfeng and the others? Even if others knew about it they would at most be surprised. But how would Xie Jingxing's close family and friends think? Xie Jingxing would face the doubts of his closest family, which even Shen Miao did not dare to imagine. Even if she was betrayed and hurt in her previous life, she was still on the same side as the Shen family. But after Xie Jingxing's identity was revealed, that he was Prince Rui of the Great Liang, the situation became much more complicated. Xie Jingxing smiled casually, "So what if I know?" He said, "There is no harm in the world hating me." He looked at Shen Miao and there was some evilness in his smile. "I am not afraid." But one did not know why. Shen Miao felt somewhat sad when she saw his smile. She felt that this handsome and beautiful young man was not as heartless as he looked. Shen Miao was still thinking about it when Xie Jingxing suddenly touched her head and said, "Do not take off the bracelet. Since it is given to you, one is not afraid of others recognizing it." Shen Miao actually did not like people touching her head. What would it look like if the empress of a country was touched by others? Even if Shen Qiu touched her head, Shen Miao would also be unhappy, but today she allowed Xie Jingxing to do it for the first time. She sighed in her heart. Today there was no need to haggle so much. Xie Jingxing stood up, "Thought that you came over because of an urgent matter. If there is nothing, I will leave first." He said, "In the future if there is any problem just call Song Yang. He is now your secret guard so there is no need to open the window and wait for me. I will wake you up when I reach." He said it naturally and Shen Miao did not feel that there was anything wrong. It was until Xie Jingxing left that Shen Miao felt that these words were too ambiguous. Chapter 695. She thought of Xie Jingxing's words and tried to softly call out, "Song Yang." In a blink of an eye, there was a young man dressed in black like a guard in front of her. Shen Miao had a headache. Did Xie Jingxing stuff someone into her boudoir? In the future she would be watched even when she was sleeping? She asked, "You stay in the room all day?" Song Yang said, "This subordinate lives on the tree at the entrance and when young foreign call the subordinate's name, this subordinate is a person who practices martial arts and would be able to hear it softly." Shen Miao looked at him in surprise. "What did you call me?" Song Yang bowed to her, "Young foreign." Shen Miao said, "Do not call me young foreign." "Yes, young foreign." Shen Miao. After a long while, she waved her hands and said helplessly, "Never mind. Let me ask you, what did Xie Jingxing go to do?" Xie Jingxing left in a hurry and it seemed that he had something important to do. Shen Miao felt uneasy because of the matter in the day and thought that Xie Jingxing went to find Su Mingfeng to silence him. Song Yang said, "This subordinate do not know." Shen Miao took a deep breath. Xie Jingxing did not send a secret guard but sent someone to monitor her. She sized up this person called Song Yang. He looked young and strong. Tomorrow he would follow the little kitchen to chop firewood. Xie Jingxing left the Shen mansion and instructed Tai Yi, in the future let Ji Yushu stay further away from Song Yang. Ji Yushu had the temperament of wishing for the world to be in chaos and felt that the days were too leisurely. To create trouble for him at this critical juncture, he really wanted to kick him back to the Great Liang. Tai Yi complied and suddenly thought of something. "Master, the traveling Great Master Guanzhen has arrived at Putuo Monastery. Previously His Majesty let you go take a look. Now that he is in Mingqi, when do you plan to leave?" Xie Jingxing thought for a moment and said, "Tomorrow?" The next day the weather was extremely good. Luo Tan had recently fallen in love with cutting window flowers and thinking that it was the end of the year, she could cut some festive patterns to paste on the windows. She carried a large stack of red paper and scissors over and wanted to cut the window flowers with Shin Miao. As Shin Miao was cutting, she remembered some things. In her previous life in the state of Qin, those princesses and princes deliberately made fun of her, making her cut window decorations and do needlework. She had to cut and embroider day and night. Not only did she have poor eyesight, her vision became blurry at night, and her hands also developed a thick layer of calluses, making them very rough. Later when she returned to the palace, even if Shuangjiang brought a stone to help her grind, she was still unable to grind off the calluses. Coincidentally, it was Fu Xiuyi's birthday and all the beauties in the inner palace wanted to send birthday gifts to coax the emperor to be happy. Mei Foran's song lingered for 3 days and the way her slender jade fingers fluttered made everyone stare blankly. When it was her turn, Shin Miao presented an embroidered painting of mountains and rivers. She was the empress and it was not dignified to sing and dance. That mountain-river diagram was very imposing and Fu Xiuyi obviously liked it very much and the officials also praised it. Mei Foran did not let it go and insisted that Shin Miao also play a kongho. Shin Miao was unwilling and looked at Fu Xiuyi with some pleading eyes. Fu Xiuyi downplayed it. Since Mayor is interested, then the empress can play a song for Zhen. Zhen had not heard you play the zither for many years. Shin Miao was forced to play helplessly and could only play. Shin Miao knew how to play the kongho. She actually learned a lot of things for Fu Xiuyi and even though it was not as moving as Mei Foran's zither, she was still able to listen to it. But it still provoked criticism from the officials, ridicule from the concubines and everyone pointed at it. What? It was because that pair of hands that were used to play the kongho was too ugly. The joints were thick due to working all year round and one could see thick scissors between the fingers. The entire hand was clumsy and rough, not like the hands of the empress of a country, but more like the hands of a peasant woman in the countryside. Chapter 696. Compared to that pair of delicate white and beautiful jade hands, it formed a sharp contrast. She was very afraid. Not afraid that she would make a fool of herself, but afraid that because of her, Wan Yu and Fu Ming would be pointed at. When she was playing the Chinese harp, she saw Mei Foran smiling charmingly at her and seeing Fu Xiuyi's cold and harsh expression. Her heart was so sad that she wanted to cry. It was just that Shin Miao could not cry. For Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she wanted to be a dignified and indifferent empress. She pretended that she did not care about anything, but when she returned to Kuaning Palace, she let Shuangjiang bring double the grindstone and grind off a layer of skin on her hands. Luo Tan saw that Shin Miao was lost in thought and asked, "Youngest Biao sister?" Shin Miao recovered to her senses and saw that the picture of a magpie in spring had been cut off. She could not help but smile bitterly. Now that she had a second life, her hands were still tender and flawless, but it seemed that the calluses were still there, constantly reminding her of her embarrassing past. Shin Miao threw the scissors away and said, "Not cutting anymore." Luo Tan made an sound and asked, "Why?" Shin Miao casually said, "Calluses will grow." Luo Tan, who had always worshipped Shin Miao, could not help but have a strange expression. "It is not like cutting day and night, how would calluses grow?" She then said, "No wonder your little name is Jiao Jiao." Shin Miao picked up the teacup and took a sip when she saw Guyu walking in from outside. "Young lady, Foran wants you to go to the main hall." Luo Shuiyan did not have any official duties today and was in the residence. Shin Miao asked, "What matter does mother call me for?" Guyu hesitated for a moment before saying, "This servant also do not know, but Su family's Foran came to our residence and is currently talking to Foran in the main hall." Su family? Shin Miao's hands paused and put down the teacup. The Count of Ping Nan's Su family. Exactly. In the main hall, Luo Shuiyan was talking to Su Foran. Su Foran did not come empty-handed today, as she said that her master had obtained 2 snow sparrows and these snow sparrows could only be found in the northern country. Su Foran was afraid that they would spoil it and knew that Luo Shuiyan was from the northwestern region, so she specially came to ask how the snow sparrows could be raised. Luo Shuiyan previously thought that Su Foran was here to laugh at her, but upon seeing Su Foran's sincere expression, she did not have any intention of teasing. He also carried 2 baskets of fresh fruits from the countryside, which were fresh and tender. Previously the residence of the formidable great general and the residence of the Marquis of Lin and were enemies, and the Su family was on good terms with the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and naturally the Shen and Su family were strangers and did not care about each other. 2 years ago the matter, Shen of the matter of the resistance. The Shen family was of the Shen and Shen. Even though at the end it was self-defeating and made Emperor Wen Hui relax his vigilance, but Luo Shuiyan remembered this in her heart. Is there? And there, Luo and one of Shin of Luo of. One of one. Luo. It was just that her heart was somewhat puzzled. This Su Furin said that she came to ask how to raise the snow sparrows, but after talking for half a day, she did not mention about the snow sparrows at all. She only pestered Luo Shuiyan to talk about the new and interesting things in the Shaochun city and repeatedly praised Luo Shuiyan for teaching her children well and for giving birth to a pair of good children. The praises made Luo Shuiyan somewhat red. After praising for so long, Luo Shuiyan thought that it was time to let Shin Miao come out to meet the guests and let someone call Shin Miao over. But her heart was suspicious. Could it be that the residence of the Marquis of Lin was about to fall and the Su family wanted to find a backer for themselves, so they wanted to curry favor with the Shin family? If that was the case, then the Su family really could not be associated. Thinking of this, Luo Shuiyan felt that her decision to call Shin Miao over was somewhat impulsive. Especially when she saw Su Furin looking at the door expectantly, she felt even more depressed. It was just that the words that were said were like the water that was poured out, so it was not good to refute. Chapter 697. Until the maid outside came over to report that young lady had come over. Su Furin immediately sat up straight and looked towards the door with some excitement. One saw a tall young lady wearing a light yellow dress walking in. She was quite handsome with some heroic spirit in her brows and wheat-colored skin. She was also hopping when she walked and her hair was combed into a deer bun. She only had 2 pearl earrings and there was a red dagger at her waist. Su Furin. She did not think that Su Mingfeng would like such a female. One look and one could tell that she was lively and unruly. When that young lady saw Luo Shuiyan, she laughed. Youngest Gu. Youngest Gu? Su Furin was surprised for a moment before she saw clearly that there was another young lady behind this young lady. This person was wearing a lilac pleated skirt with pleated begonia, a small white coat and a snow-white cloak over her head. Her skin was as white as a peeled egg, her eyes were round and bright, her nose and mouth were small and her brows were delicate, making her look very lovable. But there was a strange posture that suppressed all the tenderness and naivety. She walked in a dignified and steady manner, looking like a person that came out from the palace. When Su Furin just married Su Yu, she had seen the Empress before when the bride met the Empress Dowager. She felt that this petite young lady had the exact same posture as the Empress and was even more arrogant than the Empress. The one who walked over was a proud and cold noble lady with her chin up, and every move had the air of nobility that only a purple marquis would have. That young lady called Luo Shuiyan mother, before looking at Su Furin. Luo Shuiyan quickly said, "This is the Furin of the Count of Pingnan Su family. This is my daughter and niece, Tanner." Shin Miao and Luo Tan bowed to Su Furin. Su Furin did not go to the palace banquet previously and only heard of Shin Miao going against Princess Mingyan at the banquet. She knew that Shin Miao was not a docile person. Thus when she heard Su Minglang say that Su Mingfeng was interested in Shin Miao, she was somewhat worried. But she had to come and take a look, thus she thickened her face and sent the invitation. After all, it was her son's lifelong event. Thinking that Luo Tan was definitely an unruly female hero, one subconsciously thought that Luo Tan was Shin Miao. One did not think that after seeing the real person, one then felt that it was the complete opposite of the truth. She smiled as she took out 2 pouches from her sleeves and stuffed it into Shin Miao's and Luo Tan's hands. Shin Furin really know how to raise people. This biological daughter and biological niece are both better looking than the other. Just now when I walked over, I was still wondering where this immortal daughter came from. Shin Furin is really blessed. Luo Tan and Shin Miao looked at the pouch in their hands and were somewhat at a loss. It was not the new year, so why would they give a pouch? It was still alright if they were familiar with each other, but Shin Miao knew that the Su family and the Shin family did not have any relation. Could it be that the matter with Su Mingfeng yesterday was exposed? But even if it was exposed, what did it have to do with Su Furin coming to the Shin residence? Luo Shuiyan also looked at the pouch and was somewhat stiff. Just as she was about to open her mouth to decline, Su Furin held her hands down and said, "If you were to decline, I would be angry. I saw that these 2 young ladies are beautiful and well-mannered, thus my heart likes them very much. It is just a little greeting gift. Everyone said that Shin Furin is forthright, so why be so stingy?" She sighed again. "It would be good if I had 2 daughters." Luo Shuiyan was really confused by Su Furin today and could only go along with her words. "What are you saying?" Foreign have 2 sons in the residence and they are also very outstanding. How are they outstanding? Su Foreign shook her head. Ming Lang is very stubborn and mischievous. Every day he does not think of making progress and only know how to follow his father to mess around. I heard that your Chior was very sensible at a young age and my heart is very envious. Isn't there still Ming Feng? Luo Shuiyan smiled. The eldest young master in the residence is a young talent. Su Foreign's heart was delighted and looked towards Xin Miao and Luo Tan. 2 young ladies, we are chatting about some boring things and you would find it annoying to listen. Go and play on your own. I will speak to Foreign. This was a tactful way of sending them away. Xin Miao's heart became more vigilant. Su Foreign would send her away upon the mention of Su Ming Feng. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly and Su Foreign was really here because of yesterday's matter? Luo Tan and Xin Miao walked outside and Xin Miao borrowed the opportunity to turn her back and said softly, Song Yang, go to the main hall and listen to what they are talking about. She knew that no matter how soft her voice was, Song Yang would be able to hear it. When Luo Tan saw it, she asked, Biao youngest sister, what are you muttering to yourself? In the main hall, Su Foreign covered her heart and looked at Luo Shuiyan with melancholy. Not to hide from Foreign, Ming Feng is indeed not bad. For so many years he did not let his father and I worry about him. He is born with a talented appearance and high in learning. He entered the officialdom at a young age and is filial and well-mannered. One would not be able to find a second person like him in the entire Ding capital. Luo Shuiyan had a smile on her face but her heart was muttering. Just now she said that Xinxiu was good and now she said that her own son was the best in the Ding capital. How would one boast like this? Just as she was thinking, she heard Su Foreign exaggeratedly sighing, just a little bad. My son is stubborn and likes one thing and would not look at other things. That is to the extent that he has not married until now. Really sinful. Chapter 698. Luo Shuiyan jumped in shock and did not know why Su Foreign suddenly said such scary words. She thought in her heart that it was just that they were not married and it was not like females were afraid of wasting their youth. Su Mingfeng's talent and appearance were placed there so it was natural to be picky. But seeing Su Foreign's distressed look, she still comforted, what is this? Foreign need not worry too much about it. Look at our residence's Chioer who is still not married until now. One must pick a wife well. One will not be able to eat hot tofu if one is anxious. If one were to pick one for him in a hurry and discover that it is not suitable in the future, it would be harming oneself and others. Foreign said it very correctly. Su Foreign pulled Luo Shuiyan's hands and said with a smile, the younger generation have their own fortune. I originally thought so. But this child, Ming Feng, is a tight-lipped gourd and would not tell me anything. I do not know his thoughts at all. Luo Shuiyan listened perfunctorily. She had seen Su Ming Feng before and he had a good eloquence. Su Foreign really dared to say that he was a tight-lipped gourd when debating. She really did not want to continue talking about other people's family matters with Su Foreign so she changed the topic. Does Su Foreign not want to know how these sparrows are raised? Su Foreign glanced at the 2 sparrows in the cage but pretended not to hear and continued, it is better to talk about my good-for-nothing son. Luo Shuiyan, when Ming Feng was young, he liked a painting that his father found and afterwards other paintings did not enter his eyes. When others gave it to him, he would not even look at it but when that painting was given away by his father, Ming Feng thought about it for many years. Su Foreign sighed, Ming Feng is a sentimental person and the things that he fancied are the best and because of this, he would not be willing to settle for anything else. Just as Luo Shuiyan was puzzled, she heard Su Foreign's voice, this young lady is the same. He likes a young lady and other young ladies would not enter his heart. Luo Shuiyan suddenly understood and smiled, so eldest Su young master already has a sweetheart. One do not know which family's young lady has such good fortune. This was originally a polite remark but one did not think that Su Foreign was waiting for this sentence. She immediately clapped her hands and said, it is the young lady of your residence. Luo Shuiyan's face instantly turned from green to white, then from white to green. Her feelings had come knocking on her door in a roundabout way, waiting for her. Luo Shuiyan was wondering why the other party brought 2 bird cages over but didn't even ask about the birds. Instead he kept on praising his own son. Now she suddenly understood. He was here to claim marriage. Su Foreign saw that Luo Shuiyan's expression was not very happy and her heart was anxious. She knew that the Shen family had a big business and did not need to place the Su family's little property in their eyes. There were many families like the Su family who were willing to marry into the Shen family in the Ding capital. In addition to seeing Shin Miao with her own eyes today, she did not see any of the rumors of a weak and vulgar young lady. Such a dignified bearing, a girl who knew when to advance and when to retreat. If he were to marry her and make her the mistress of the household, she would be able to control the situation. Both the inside and the outside were very satisfied. It all depended on the attitude of the Shin family. Luo Shuiyan's face turned cold as she said, "Su Foreign came today just for this?" Su Foreign was somewhat embarrassed as she knew that it was not right to look at one's daughter-in-law under other pretexts, but she still said, "Shin Foreign must not be angry. I know that I was rude today, but you are also a mother and should be able to understand my thoughts." Luo Shuiyan's expression slightly relaxed. When Su Foreign came today, her attitude was indeed not bad. One would not slap a smiling person, so she said, "Without any reason or rhyme, why would Su Foreign come and talk to me about this?" Luo Shuiyan's heart thumped. Could it be that Shin Miao and Su Mingfeng had secretly arranged a marriage? Even though the folkways of Ming Qi were considered to be more open, it was not a glorious thing for both families to privately make an alliance without knowing about it. Chapter 699. Su Foreign said, "I heard from Ming Lang that Ming Feng is secretly interested in fifth young lady. Initially one did not believe it because this son of mine is a blockhead. Until now he did not get close to any young lady. I don't know what kind of person fifth miss is, so I came here today." After seeing fifth young lady, one finally understood why Ming Feng liked her. Good looks, good temperament, and this bearing was not bad. I guess that in the entire Ming Qi only the Shin family could raise such a young lady. Not to hide it from Shin Foreign, not only Ming Feng, even I like it very much, so one could not wait to tell Foreign about this matter. I know Madam is a straightforward person and likes to be straightforward, so I won't beat around the bush. These words were said with sincerity and praised Shin Miao without a trace. As a mother, how could she not like her daughter being praised? Luo Shuiyan's complexion gradually improved. But how could Shin Miao's marriage be decided with just one sentence? Firstly, the Shin family's position in Ming Qi was special, and it did not matter if the in-laws were strong or weak, thus it was really difficult to decide on Shin Miao's marriage. Secondly, even though Su Mingfeng had a good reputation outside, he was sick a few years back and delayed his official career. Luo Shuiyan did not want Shin Miao to marry a sickly person. Moreover, Luo Shuiyan and Su Mingfeng had not met before and did not know how this person's character was. Thirdly, and the most important point, was that Su Mingfeng liked Shin Miao, but one did not know if Shin Miao liked Su Mingfeng or not. Luo Shuiyan was an open-minded mother. Even though it was the matchmaker's words, Luo Shuiyan hoped that Shin Miao would be happy and that her future husband must be someone that she liked. Therefore he couldn't make a hasty decision like this. My daughter's marriage cannot be decided in such a short time. Luo Shuiyan smiled and said, "On behalf of my master, I thank Foreign and Gongzi for their love. It's just that the marriage ceremony requires a lot of consideration. I can't give Madam an answer in such a short period of time. I'm afraid I'll have to think about it for a few more days." Just as Madam had said, everyone was a mother. As a mother, I love my daughter dearly and hope that Foreign can understand. Luo Shuiyan did not dare to be too harsh with her words and left some leeway. This made Madame Su extremely satisfied. She said a few more words before leaving. After Madame Su left, Luo Shuiyan's eyes darkened and she looked a little dignified. All along, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xan felt that Shin Miao was still young and there was no rush in marriage. But when Su Foreign came to visit with the intention to claim kinship, it reminded Luo Shuiyan that at this age, it was time for Shin Miao to be engaged. But how many young talents were there in the Ding capital? Luo Shuiyan planned to wait for Shin Xan to return before telling him about this matter. At the same time, she would get someone to make a booklet so that she could look around. Madame Su returned to the Su residence. For the first time, Master Su didn't go fishing and play with the birds. Instead he stayed in the house. Seeing that Madame Su had returned, she immediately went forward to massage Madame Su's shoulders and ordered a maid to serve tea. Old Master Su was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw Madame Su, and the surrounding servants were already used to it. Master Su asked, "How was it? What did Shin Foreign say?" "I didn't agree, but I didn't say I wouldn't agree either. I think I still need to think about it." Su Foreign said, "After all, I went over so abruptly today. Moreover, the Shin family is not an ordinary family, so it is not a bad thing to think a little longer." "Still need to think." Su Yu's face fell. "What is there to think about?" Su Foreign found it funny. "Could it be that you think that if I go over today one would agree?" "Why not agree?" Su Yu asked. What is not good about Ming Feng? Is there a second young talent like Ming Feng in the Ding capital? Whoever's young lady marries to Ming Feng, that is a blessing cultivated in the previous lifetime. As he spoke, he suddenly thought of something. Wait, how about fifth Shin young lady? Chapter 700. He finally remembered to ask about this matter. Master Su had seen Shin Miao at the palace banquet and felt that Shin Miao was not bad, just that her character was a little too strong. However, most men could not accurately judge a woman. This kind of thing had to be done by the woman. That was why Madame Su came out and looked at this future daughter-in-law with a critical gaze. So you wanted to hear what Madame Su thought of Shin Miao. Su Foreign drank a mouthful of tea and said, Ming Feng's foresight is indeed not bad. I see that this fifth Shin young lady is much better than most of the young ladies in the Ding capital. There was no need to talk about her temperament, and since she was a young lady taught by Shin Xian, it was assumed that her character would not be bad. That kind of bearing was rare, like that of a noble from the palace. But there was one point. One fear that Ming Feng would not be able to tame this kind of young lady. But it is also good. Ming Feng's temperament is gentle, and with such a strong foreign as the matriarch of the household, this residence can be controlled. It is very good. It was rare for Su Yu to hear Su Foreign praise a person like this, and his heart started to mutter. Wasn't it said that mothers-in-law were extremely picky with their daughters-in-law? Could it be that his wife was too gentle? Su Ming Feng returned from outside, and just as he was about to step into the main hall, the corner of his clothes was pulled by someone. When he looked back, it was Su Ming Lang. Su Ming Lang looked at him seriously. Eldest brother, you must not go in and create trouble, lest you ruin your lifelong event. My lifelong event? Su Ming Feng was puzzled. What lifelong event? Today I heard Jin Feng Jieji joking with other people, saying that mother went to look for a wife for you. Su Ming Lang said. Su Ming Feng was shocked when he heard it. What, look for a wife? Who is it? Su Ming Lang said, isn't it Shin family's older sister? Mother went to the Shin family to look for a wife for me? Su Ming Feng raised his voice. Su Ming Lang jumped in shock and said hatefully that iron did not become steel. Isn't it just marrying a wife? In the future, when older sister Shin becomes my eldest Sa, she would not be able to see your actions. He patted Su Ming Feng's arm. Really envy you. The Su family came to the Shin mansion to find a wife for Su Ming Feng. On the surface, no one knew about this matter, but in fact there were many people who knew about it. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan discussed for a while and really started to seriously look for young talents in the Ding capital for Shin Miao, and even considered if they should let Shin Miao participate in a few flower banquets. Shin Xian also let Shin Qiu pay attention to the youths in the capital who were of the same age as him. The Shin mansion had already created such a big movement. If the residents of Prince Rui did not know about it, then it would not be justifiable. When Xie Jingxing returned to the residence of the Qin prince, he was faced with Ji Yushu's provocation of wanting the world to be in chaos. Song Yang didn't know where he got the news from, but he jumped up and down with a letter in his hand saying, Third brother, the Su family has come to propose marriage. What are you still waiting for? He paused before continuing, still not going to find trouble with Su Ming Feng. Gao Yang's face also revealed a worried look. Su Foreign knows how to conduct herself well in the Ding capital and is on good terms with many Furins. The Su family's reputation is also not bad, and if Shin Xian feels that Su Ming Feng is not bad, perhaps he would agree to this marriage. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at the letter and knew the contents of the letter like the back of his hand, and felt a headache. Su Ming Feng's way of doing things was more dependable, but he had a pair of parents who were too jumpy. Now that they had come to propose marriage, one could not predict what shocking things they would do. Moreover, Ji Yushu was still fanning the flames at the side and said with an indignant face, What a good Su Ming Feng. Initially when he was with third older brother, he called each other brothers and even had such a long friendship. Now that third older brother has changed his identity, he quietly went out to poach. His schemes are really deep. Ancestors said that a long journey tests the stamina of a horse and time reveals a person's heart. So this Su Ming Feng is this kind of person. Third older brother, you should break off all ties with him. Chapter 701. Gao Yang really could not listen to Ji Yushu's nonsense and said, Now it is better to find another method. The Su family's matter was a small matter, but the Shin family had already started to search for a husband for fifth Shin young lady. We do not have much time in Ming-Chi, so if you want to do it, settle it earlier. When these words were said, Xie Jingxing's expression turned cold. Jiu Shu did not detect it but had an inspiration and said, I have an idea. The few of them looked at him together and Jiu Shu said, since third older brother is a dead person in their eyes, why not pretend to be a ghost at night and appear in Su Mingfeng's dreams? Just say that Xin young lady is the person that third older brother fancied and wanted to have a ghost marriage. Su Mingfeng would be scared and naturally would not dare to have any ideas on fifth Xin young lady. AI third older brother, don't go. Listen to me finish. Gao Yang shook his head and sighed. Stupid. Xie Jingxing returned to the study and sat down in front of the table. His brows were tightly knitted and no one knew what he was thinking about. Tie, who was beside him, asked hesitantly, Master, today at Putua Temple what Great Master Guanzhen said? Great Master Guanzhen was a wandering monk. Some said that he was from the Great Liang, some said that he was from the Qing country and some said that he was from the Ming-Chi. But one thing was for sure. Whenever Master Guanzhen came to the temple, everyone would treat him as an honored guest. Great Master Guanzhen was a disciple of Buddha. It was said that he could see the past and future of a person. This was naturally an exaggeration, but Great Master Guanzhen's prophecy was extremely accurate. He once predicted a flood in the Great Liang. Emperor Yongle tried to persuade Master Guanzhen to stay, but Master Guanzhen refused. 2 years ago when Xie Jingxing returned to the Great Liang, Emperor Yongle wanted to find Master Guanzhen to take a look at Xie Jingxing's physiognomy, but at that time Master Guanzhen had already left the Great Liang and no one knew of his whereabouts. He didn't expect to meet him here. In the daytime when they arrived at Putua Temple, Xie Jingxing did not say anything but Reverend Guanzhen had already guessed his identity. No one knew how he managed to guess it. And the prophecy for Xie Jingxing was, Army Destroyer Ziwei, ferocious dragon subdue the heavens. He was using his life to decide the overall situation. The meaning of this explanation was that Xie Jingxing was a very important person. He alone could affect the entire situation. The Army Destroyer Purple Finger first broke and then established, using both kindness and might. When Xie Jingxing was in Ming-Chi, he claimed to be the heir apparent of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage and died in the battlefield. Afterwards, when Prince Rui of the Great Liang reappeared in front of the world, it was established. The dragon was the leader of all living things. Unfortunately, it was a vicious dragon. Savage and ruthless. Xie Jingxing was asking about tribulation. However, Great Master Guanzhen shook his head. He only said that the fierce dragon doesn't get tribulated was actually helping people to pass the tribulation. When Xie Jingxing asked again, Master Guanzhen said that heaven's secrets must not be divulged and refused to say anything more. Tai was a little discouraged. It was not easy for Great Master Guanzhen to read his fortune, but he gave a vague answer. Then he thought about how his master had a temperament that was indifferent to external things. Fierce dragon doesn't get tribulated, helping others to overcome their tribulations. Listening to his master, he seemed to have become a bodhisattva, who had such a big face to be able to let his master be his backer. Even if that person dared to do so, would master be willing? Xie Jingxing said, do not bother about this. First send this letter back to the Great Liang. His expression was somewhat stern. Shen Miao was unable to fall asleep on the bed. Song Yang's words in the afternoon were still lingering in her ears. She had never thought that Su Furin's purpose of coming to the Shen mansion was to seek marriage with Su Mingfeng. Thinking of Song Yang's wooden face as he repeated all the words of the two people in the room to her without missing a single word, especially when he was a man speaking in a woman's language and kept on saying, all are mothers, Shen Miao felt that it was somewhat funny. Xie Jingxing was indeed a talent. One did not know where did he find such a precious secret guard. Chapter 702. But as she thought about it, she could not smile any more. Why would Su Furin want to claim marriage for Su Mingfeng? From Song Yang's words, Su Mingfeng had deep feelings for Shen Miao and Shen Miao would never believe in these words. Not to mention that Su Mingfeng had only seen her a few times, moreover that day on the streets, Su Mingfeng's gaze when he looked at her was not special at all. Could it be that this was Su Mingfeng's conspiracy? Shen Miao thought that because Su Mingfeng wanted to understand the secret of the tiger head bracelet, he decided to marry her. Was he not afraid that he would not be able to find out the truth by spending the whole day with her? Or did he think that after she became his wife she would tell him everything? But Su Mingfeng's actions were too much of a loss. In order to find out the truth he even threw in his entire life. Those people in the Supreme Court of Justice should be so ashamed that they would not have the face to face their fellow villagers. Guyu walked in from the outside with a stack of clothes in her hands and said with a smile, "Young lady, tomorrow one is going to Putua Monastery and Furin said to wear some light colors." This servant brought some darker colored clothes for young lady to pick and wear tomorrow morning. As she spoke, she cut the wick of the oil lamp for Shin Miao and said, "Young lady must rest early today and wake up early tomorrow. One fear that there is a long way to go." Shin Miao felt helpless when this matter was mentioned. In the evening, Luo Shuiyan's maid came over to tell Luo Tan and Shin Miao that she would bring the three of them to Putua Monastery to offer incense. Luo Tan had never been to Putua Monastery before and was naturally very happy, but Shin Miao was somewhat lacking in interest. Putua Monastery was considered a famous monastery in the Ding capital and was located halfway up the mountain in the northern part of the city. It was said that the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas there were very spiritual, and the most spiritual was the Tree of Cultivating Destinies. The young female used copper coins to exchange for some red ropes from the monks in the temple and tied the red ropes to a pouch and threw it up the tree. If the red ropes and the pouch were not thrown down, it meant that the Yu Lao had heard the female's prayers and would bring a good marriage for the female. Shin Miao had also gone to that Tree of Cultivating Destinies in her past life, and in order to be able to tie the knot with Fu Xiao Yi, she bought 100 red ropes in one go and threw it up. Afterwards this matter was accidentally spread by Shin Qing and Shin Yu, and it became a joke in the Ding capital. Therefore Shin Miao did not like the Tree of Karma that much. If she did not hear Su Furin and Luo Shuiyan's conversation from Songyang today, Shin Miao would not have thought of anything and would only feel that it was nearing the end of the year and Luo Shuiyan really wanted to go and offer incense. But after knowing what they said in the main hall, Shin Miao understood that Luo Shuiyan did not want to offer incense but obviously wanted her to throw the red rope on the Tree of Cultivating Destinies. Shin Miao's heart was extremely unwilling and even thought of pretending to be sick. But this would be too deliberate, and Luo Tan was in high spirits and Shin Miao was easily soft-hearted towards Luo Shuiyan. Thinking that it was just to throw the red rope, she could only agree. However, he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. This night Shin Miao did not sleep well. She had several dreams during the night, and in her dreams she was standing under the Tree of Cultivating Destinies and throwing the red rope up. Luo Shuiyan bought an entire bucket of red rope for her and Shin Miao's arms were sore from throwing it, but all the red ropes with her markings were all gone. There was nothing on the ground or on the tree. Just as she was feeling astonished, she saw a purple-clad youth sitting on the tree with a bunch of her red ropes in his arms. His lips hooked up to her with a smile that was not a smile and asked, "Who are you going to marry?" Sword-like eyebrows, a straight nose, thin red lips and a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as sharp as a blade. It was Xie Jingxing's face. Shin Miao suddenly woke up from her dream and could not fall asleep no matter what. She managed to endure till dawn, and when Jingzhi came in she was shocked and asked, "Why did young lady not sleep well last night? Her eyes are all black." Chapter 703. Shin Miao waved her hands. She only felt that this dream was strange and had some unknown shame and indignation, so she simply did not say anything. After eating and washing up, one went out of the door and saw Luo Shuiyan and the rest waiting in the hall. What made Shin Miao surprised was that other than Luo Tan, Shin Qiu and Luo Ling were also there. Luo Shuiyan said, "Since it's an incense offering, the younger generation should all go together to pray for the blessings of Buddha." Shin Xen said, "Then I will also go along." "Why are you going?" Luo Shuiyan hated that he didn't understand her meaning and said, "You don't have to go." Shin Qiu was puzzled why his father could not go, but Shin Miao understood in her heart. It seemed that Luo Shuiyan not only wanted her and Luo Tan to throw the red ropes, most likely she also wanted Shin Qiu and Luo Ling to throw it. After all, Shin Qiu and Luo Ling had reached the age to marry. But wasn't the Tree of Cultivating Destiny something that only women could throw? If it was really hung up, could it be that Shin Qiu and Luo Ling would become cut sleeves in the future? Shin Miao could not help but shiver. Without wasting too much time, everyone quickly set off. The distance between Putua Monastery and the Shin Mansion was somewhat far. If they set off in the morning, it would be close to noon when they arrived. Along the way, Luo Tan was in high spirits and kept asking Luo Shuiyan if Putua Temple was really so magical. As Luo Shuiyan spoke, she indeed led the topic to the Tree of Karma. When Luo Tan heard the news about the Tree of Cultivating Destinies, she found it very interesting and said, "This is somewhat similar to a custom of our Shaochun city. But since Pu Tuo Monastery is a famous monastery, then this tree of cultivating destinies should be very efficacious. She shook Shen Miao's arm. Biao, youngest sister, how about we also go and throw the red rope? Aren't you not in a rush to marry? Shen Miao looked at her from the corner of her eyes. Luo Tan lightly coughed twice. Even so, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Luo Shuiyan also said, Jiao Tan, when we arrive at Pu Tuo Temple, the two of you should also throw the red rope. Whether you are going to marry or not, you will be able to gain some good luck, won't you? Luo Tan excitedly complied. Luo Tan had long known of her mother's plans and had no choice but to comply. But it was said that they were on their way to the ancient temple that had existed for hundreds of years in Mingqi. In one of the meditation rooms, the incense was curling up, and at the moment there was a 70-year-old monk sitting there. This monk had a kind and benevolent countenance. He really looked like a disciple of the Buddha. He wore a red kasaya and held a string of Buddhist beads in his hand. The young monk beside him asked, Master, we've been waiting here for several days. Will the fated one really come? This poor monk has been waiting here for many days for her arrival, the old monk said lightly. But I've waited for a long time. The little monk was only in his teens and was at the age where he was curious. He quickly asked, When will he come? The old monk did not speak and only silently turned the Buddhist beads in his hand. Suddenly, he stopped turning the Buddhist beads and repeatedly stroked a round Buddhist bead between his fingers. After a while, the old monk smiled. In a moment, he said. When Shen Miao and entourage reached Pu Tuo Monastery, it was not even noon. Perhaps it was because the horses ran hard today, or the coachman drove the carriage well, or the road was much smoother. In short, the journey that would normally take 5.5 hours was completed in less than 4 hours today. The few of them jumped off the carriage, and Xin Xiu and Luo Ling also flipped off their horses. They saw that in the middle of the mountain in the lush forest, there was an ancient temple. Because of the layers of clouds, it was like a fairyland. In addition to the distant Buddhist sounds, one could not help but feel a sense of awe. Luo Tan sighed, really has the style of a famous temple. Luo Shuiyan instructed, Xiu or Linger, both of you dismount first. I will bring Tanner and Jiao in. After Xin Xiu and Luo Ling left, the guards of the Xin residence followed Shen Miao and entourage. Luo Tan saw a tree that was hung with red ropes from afar and said, This is the tree of cultivating destinies? Youngest Gu, quickly come and see. It is so big. Luo Shuiyan smiled, Let us first go and buy the red ropes. Shen Miao followed behind both of them and felt helpless in her heart. Luo Tan ran very fast and Luo Shuiyan had a fiery temperament, thus Shen Miao was left behind. But with the guards of the Xin residence and Song Yang in the dark, Shen Miao was not worried at all. When she followed Luo Shuiyan and the rest into a Buddhist hall, Shen Miao's skirt was suddenly pulled by someone. She turned back to look and saw a person in Taoist robes squatting at the side of the threshold. How would there be people from the Taoist sects in a Buddhist place? This Taoist priest's clothes were tattered and there was a lot pot in front of him and a horsetail whisk in his hand. One did not know why, but it was somewhat comical. He was around 40 years of age and had a small mustache as he looked at Shen Miao with bright eyes. Young lady, this poor Taoist sees that your glabella is dark and one fear that there will be a bloody calamity. There are green circles under your eyes and there will be trouble with peach blossoms. Do you want this poor Taoist to read your fortune? Where did this lunatic come from? Full of nonsense. Jingzhe was extremely angry. Shen Miao pulled out the corner of her skirt and was about to walk forward without looking sideways. But she heard that person saying, Even though a phoenix's life is good, it is a pity to be imprisoned for a lifetime. Chapter 704. Even though a phoenix's life is good, it is a pity to be imprisoned for a lifetime. Shen Miao's footsteps suddenly paused as she frowned at that Taoist priest and asked, What did you say? That Taoist priest, however, turned his head away proudly and started to sing a little tune. Jingzhe said, Young lady must not take it to heart. Who knows where this swindler came from to speak nonsense? Even though one did not know why would people from the sect come to a Buddhist place, but this Taoist priest did not look proper, not to mention the sage-like demeanor of an ordinary Taoist. It seemed that he was just casually saying it and was no different from those swindlers on the streets. Shen Miao looked to the front and Luo Shuiyan and Luo Tan had already entered, and behind her, there were a few guards following behind and did not move forward. She pondered for a moment before sitting down on the small wooden stool in front of the Taoist priest's stall and said, I want to have my fortune read. This poor Taoist fortune is very precious. Before the words were finished, Shin Miao took out a golden peanut from her bag. This was the thing that Su Furen gave her in the pouch. Most likely she was afraid that it would be rude to gift it too expensive, so it was a pouch full of golden peanuts so that it would be convenient to buy things. Jingzhe and Guyu were somewhat anxious when they saw this. The most expensive fortune told on the streets was only a few taels of silver, so why was there a need to use golden peanuts? But once Shin Miao had decided on something, there was no room to change it. Even though the two maids were anxious, they were helpless. Shin Miao said, "If your fortune is accurate, then this golden peanut will belong to you. If it is not accurate, I will let people flip your stall and let the yamen come and arrest you for swindling." That Taoist priest smiled as he received the golden peanut and took out a pot of lots from his back. He shook it before handing it over to Shin Miao and smiled, "Young lady, draw 2 lots. Why do I need to smoke 2? Guyu could not help but ask. Usually 1 is enough. Could it be? She was suddenly enlightened. 1 for safety and the other for marriage? Luo Shuiyan began to worry about Shin Miao's lifelong affairs, thus she also reminded the head maid beside Shin Miao. Jingzhe and Guyu knew that the most important thing for Shin Miao to come to an ordinary temple was to throw the red string on the marriage tree. Now that the Taoist priest wanted Shin Miao to draw 2 lots, they naturally thought of this. The Taoist priest shook his head and said, "Fortune-telling. Why does one need 2 lots for fortune-telling?" Jingzhe did not understand. That Taoist looked at Shin Miao and stroked his beard as he smiled mysteriously. Young lady's destiny cannot be calculated with 1 stick. Shin Miao's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the Taoist priest's confident look, she silently took the pot of lots and shook it. 2 lots fell to the ground with a clatter. That Taoist picked up the stick and looked at it. Jingzhe and Guyu were somewhat nervous. The Taoist priest shook his head and said, "Trapped in the phoenix cage, life is in danger, causing trouble. In front of the guillotine platform it's all empty." He said, "This is a great misfortune." When these words were said, Jingzhe's and Guyu's expressions changed. What was called great omen and what was called guillotine? Jingzhe said, "What a good fake Taoist. Full of nonsense, who are you trying to deceive? I think you're a liar. I'm going to report this to the authorities." Hey, the Taoist priest said, "What's the hurry? Why can't the little girl keep her cool? Isn't there another stick here?" Shin Miao's heart was pounding. Trapped in the phoenix cage was when she was trapped in the cold palace of the 9 palaces and her struggles were fruitless. To cause trouble and implicate others, the entire Shin family was annihilated. Wasn't this the guillotine platform? She worked hard and put in effort for Fu Xiuyi to sit firmly on the emperor's throne, but at the end it was all in vain. Fu Xiuyi only gave her 3 feet of white silk. Even Wan Yu and Fu Ming did not survive and he did not leave anything behind. How was it not all in vain? Chapter 705. Shin Miao said, "Taoist priest, help me look at the other lot." Jingzhe and Guyu were somewhat anxious as they could not understand why Shin Miao would look at this Taoist priest in a different light and was even willing to let this Taoist priest look at the other lot. That Taoist priest chuckled and picked up the other lot. He glanced at Shin Miao and stroked his beard as usual before slowly saying, "Extreme negative brings bliss, purple air coming from the east, an auspicious omen. A very good lot." Jingzhe and Guyu were afraid that the Taoist priest would say something inauspicious. It was nearing the end of the year and everyone was afraid that inauspicious words would bring bad luck. Seeing him say that, they were relieved. Jingzhe did not let up and ridiculed, "I said that you are a liar. 1 lot is ominous and the other is auspicious. So which lot is true?" "Both lots are true." The Taoist priest said, "If you do not believe, ask your family's young lady if this Taoist priest is lying." Shin Miao's heart moved and said, "Jingzhe, Guyu, both of you go to the guards first. I have some words that I want to speak to this Taoist priest alone." Jingzhe wanted to persuade a few words as she felt that this Taoist priest was a swindler. However, Guyu shook her head at her and pulled her to one side to make space for Shin Miao and the Taoist priest to speak in peace. Shin Miao frowned as she looked at the Taoist priest. Does this Taoist priest know something? The Taoist priest was tidying up the lot pot as he spoke without turning his head. "I saw young lady's physiognomy and it is an extremely noble person. Looking at young lady's fate, it is a phoenix's fate. It should be a life of glory and splendor with fine food and silk clothes. Unfortunately, one's fate was changed." Shin Miao said, "What changed one's fate?" Her voice was somewhat urgent. The Taoist priest stopped his actions and looked at her. "Young lady's fate is very strange. There will be a big calamity in one's life, and after passing through this calamity, one would naturally have a smooth life. But the first lot that young lady drew did not pass through this calamity. What is my calamity? Shin Miao asked. A true phoenix and a fake phoenix. The fake phoenix snatched the true phoenix's fate and fortune, and the true phoenix was imprisoned. Shin Miao only felt that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. Real phoenix, fake phoenix, could it be that she was the real phoenix, and as for the fake phoenix, could it be Mei Furen? Mei Furen gave birth to Fu Sheng, and Fu Xiuyi loved Fu Sheng so much. In the past lifetime, Fu Ming died and she also died, so Fu Xiuyi would make Mei Furen the empress, and with Fu Xiuyi's love for Fu Sheng, perhaps he would pass the throne to Fu Sheng. Wasn't this the same as having one's fate stolen? Shin Miao said, Priest said the first lot, then in the second lot, can my calamity be passed? With your abilities it's impossible. The Taoist priest shook his head and said, but you're lucky to have a benefactor in your life. Benefactor? Shin Miao asked, who is my benefactor? This noble person has fate with you. He is the life of a vicious dragon. A vicious dragon subduing the heavens, a phoenix trapped in a cage. He can save you, and you can also dispel his evil energy. If you meet this person and borrow his power, Miss Fate will return to its rightful place. What you have lost, you will definitely gain. Shin Miao asked, where is this noble person? How can I find him? The Taoist priest smiled, far at the horizon but close at hand. This meant that he did not want to say more. Shin Miao's eyes flashed and asked again, there is another question. Ordinary people can only draw one lot, but why do I have two lots? Is this the will of heaven? She had been reborn, and every time she thought about it, there was a feeling of unreality. She feared that one day when she woke up, she would still be in that quiet cold palace and all of this was just a dream. Since this strange priest who came from nowhere was somewhat accurate, perhaps he knew a little. Heaven and earth are heartless and treat all living things as dogs. Young lady's two lots were requested by someone for young lady. Chapter 706. There is someone? Shin Miao caught the crux of the Taoist's words. Who is that person? It is someone who owes you a lot. The Taoist stood up from the ground and patted the dust off his clothes. The mysteries of heaven must not be revealed. Today this poor Taoist and young lady have already revealed too much, and any more would cause one's good fortune to be cut. Young lady should not ask any more, and remember, the past is like a dream, one must not be entangled. When one is at the peak of prosperity, purple air comes from the east. Finishing, he waved his horsetail whisk and walked away in big strides. Shin Miao stood at the same spot in a daze until Jingzhe and Guyu walked to her side. Jingzhe said, strange atmosphere. One do not know where it came from. Is there no one in Putuo Monastery to manage it? Shin Miao felt that she had seen some secrets, and there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. Just as she was thinking, Luo Shuiyan and Luo Tan walked out from inside. Luo Tan was holding a small basket in her hands, and on top of it was a big pouch connected to a red string. She said with a smile, Biao youngest sister, let's go and hang the red string. Why are you lagging behind? Luo Shuiyan also said, just now I heard that there was a reverend preaching in the meditation room, so I wanted to call you over to listen. But when I turned around, I saw you behind me. I don't know what you were doing that took you so long. Do you still want to listen? Shin Miao just listened to the Taoist conversation, and her mind was strangely confused. How would she still have the mood to listen to the monk preaching? She shook her head, not going. Then let us go hang the red string first. Luo Tan was very excited and pulled Shin Miao forward. In the meditation room that Luo Shuiyan passed by, the old monk's action of knocking the wooden fish paused. The little monk asked, Master, it is already past noon. Did Master not say that he would come? Is he coming or not? Master Guanjin stood up from the meditation mat and shook his head, not coming. Not coming? The little monk was surprised. Why? She met someone else. The little monk was puzzled. Why not come after meeting someone else? Did Master not specially wait for her here? If she did not come, then all these days of waiting would be wasted. No matter. Master Guanjin put his palms together. She also met a fated person. This is cause and effect. Shin Miao and Luo Tan went outside and arrived under the Tree of Cultivating Destinies. The Tree of Cultivating Destinies was originally a huge sweet-scented osmanthus tree. It was extremely thick and sturdy, but now, its branches could not be seen clearly. They were all covered by the purses hanging from the red strings on the tree. Luo Ling and Xin Xiu did not come at the end since this was for females to use. Luo Tan scooped up a red string and passed it to Xin Miao. Biao youngest sister, write your name on the pouch and throw it up the tree. If it is hung up, it means that the Yu Lao has heard your prayers and will arrange a good marriage for you. Luo looked at Luo as he said and said, Biao ao Biao. Biao Biao Shin Shin. Luo said Shin 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 of Shen. Is Biao. Luo Tian of Shin Shen. Yang of, Jis, of, but, Ji, Jio. Jio Luo Shuiyan also said, Jiao write some and throw them up. Don't be afraid. Xin Miao was somewhat picky as she looked at the basket of red ropes. Since she could not win against Luo Tan and Luo Shuiyan, she could only pick one and write her name on the pouch. When Luo Tan saw this, she said, Biao youngest sister, you took too little. This one cannot be thrown up. Take a few more and these will be enough. Luo Shuiyan also said, Jiao, one is not enough. Xin Miao felt that she did not want to throw any of them. Moreover, she was still thinking about the Taoist priest's words. How could she have the mood to do this? Thus, she just casually threw them away. Chapter 707. One will definitely not be able to hang. It is better for you to. Why did it hang? Luo Tan cried out in surprise. Luo Shuiyan was also very surprised. Generally speaking, the more red ropes one threw up, the higher the possibility of it hanging on the branch. If one could not hold it, one would not be able to throw it up. Who knew that Xin Miao casually threw it up and it actually hung up? Not only that, it was a high branch and it was hung so firmly that one feared that it would not fall even if the wind and rain hit. Biao youngest sister, you are too lucky. Luo Tan grabbed Xin Miao's arm and said excitedly, Look, that branch is so high that it means that the person that Biao youngest sister is going to marry must be a dragon or phoenix among men. The branch is also so stable that it means that this marriage is in the bag and is very good. Who would not like to hear the words of good fortune? Luo Shuiyan's face also bloomed into a smile. Jiao's throw is not bad. I also said that if you could not hang it up, I would think of ways to help you hang it up. But there are still many branches around this branch. Luo Tan touched her chin and explained in a serious manner, the direction of these branches are all extending towards Biao youngest sister's pouch. What does this mean? This means that Biao youngest sister has more than one marriage. Youngest Gu, this is a good thing. One family has a daughter and 100 families will seek for it. Future brother-in-law will have to face hardships in the future. Luo Tan said as she laughed. Xin Miao said, nonsense. But in her heart she thought of that priest's strange words. Green under the eyes, the difficulty of peach blossoms. She could not help but feel uneasy in her heart. Could it be that it was really said correctly? She secretly despised herself in her heart. Now that she did not even see a single peach blossom leaf, where was the difficulty of peach blossoms? It was just that Luo Tan was talking nonsense and she had treated it as the truth. This day passed exceptionally quickly and Luo Tan later hung a lot of her own red ropes up, prayed to Buddha, offered some incense, donated some incense and ate the vegetarian dishes in the temple before returning. When they returned to the Shin mansion, it was already evening and everyone was tired after a day, so they all went to rest early. Xin Miao, however, repeatedly thought about the words that priest said in the day. There was a calamity in her life, and a benefactor came to her rescue. Who was that benefactor? Who was the one who asked for 2 divination sticks for her? Or rather, who was the one who asked for a chance to be reborn? Her loved ones from her previous life had almost disappeared before she died. Xin Miao thought that even after she died, there would not be anyone to collect her corpse. Who would be so omnipotent? With such abilities and such a friendship, why did he ask for her to be reborn in this life? He never would have thought that there would be such a person. Xin Miao suddenly remembered something and said, Song Yang. A black-clothed man suddenly appeared in the room. Xin Miao face-bombed and only felt that Xie Jingxing's secret guards were so elusive that even her mistress would be shocked. She said, You are not allowed to tell Xie Jingxing about today's matter and what the priest said to me. She added another sentence. If you tell Xie Jingxing, I will say that you have molested him. Song Yang, remember that, Xin Miao threatened. Every day in the Ding capital there were numerous people who were worried about all sorts of trivial matters. Young females were worried about getting married, young people were worried about obtaining scholarly honors, the elderly were weak and the young were childish. All of them were bustling about for benefits. Some people schemed for small benefits, some gambled for great wealth, and there were even some who bet their entire family's life but looked at the whole world. In the imperial family of Ming-Chi, as Emperor Wenhui's health deteriorated day by day, the princes became more and more restless. Prince Zhou's faction was arrogant and Prince Li's faction's actions were not small. Originally one thought that number 9 was content with his lot, but in the end with the Shin family and the Qing country's matter, no matter how one calculated, the crown prince was the weakest. Chapter 708. Emperor Wenhui sighed and his brows were shrouded with a layer of declining air. Most likely he had been ill for a long time as his complexion was not good. Usually when he got angry in the throne room, it was just a forced appearance as there were quite a number of people eyeing this position covetously. If he were to fall, the court would be in chaos and one feared that there would be a loophole for those who had intentions to take advantage of it. When one was young, the princes were still young and did not feel anything, but when one grew older, one would be shocked to find out that one was not raising sons but a pack of wolves. Now that the young wolves had grown up, some things became uncontrollable. How is the crown prince's health recently? Emperor Wenhui asked Su Gongong, who was beside him. Su Gongong quickly replied, "Yesterday the Empress saw the crown prince's consort and the crown prince's consort said that the crown prince's condition had improved and the imperial physician also said that he would be better after a period of recuperation." Emperor Wenhui shook his head. The crown prince's health is a problem. As the most legitimate successor to the throne, the crown prince was ill and weak. Even though there was a group of supporters and in the early years he was able to control the situation, but as Prince Zhou's and Prince Li's factions gradually grew stronger, the crown prince's power was suppressed. Especially with the addition of Prince Ding recently, Emperor Wenhui only felt a headache. Fortunately, even though the crown prince was ill and weak, he had given birth to the imperial grandson early, so that even if Emperor Wenhui passed away and the crown prince was ill, as long as the imperial grandson was slightly older, then the imperial grandson would be able to succeed the throne. Imperial physician Su's eyes and nose looked down, as if he did not sense Emperor Wenhui's intention. But his heart was very clear that Emperor Wenhui was most optimistic about the crown prince. There was no other reason. One was that the crown prince's succession was justified and the second was that the crown prince's health was not good, so relatively, he was the least threat to Emperor Wenhui. Unlike the other sons, Prince Zhou's faction was so arrogant that they had no one in their eyes. Prince Li's faction looked kind but had private dealings with many officials. Even Prince Ding, who was the most uninterested in power, had become a dog that would bite but not bark in Emperor Wenhui's eyes. All of them were like wolves and tigers that Emperor Wenhui had to guard against. A gust of cold wind blew in from outside the window, causing the Xian paper on the table to roll up. Seeing this, Imperial Physician Su quickly got up to close the window and said, "It's late at night. Your Majesty should sleep early." At the same time, the crown prince that Emperor Wenhui was talking about was talking to someone. If anyone saw it, they would be shocked. The person who was talking to the crown prince was not anyone else but Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi. Of these two people, one was the legitimate crown prince in Emperor Wenhui's eyes and the other was the dog that bites but does not bark in the prince's hearts. At this moment they were sitting at two sides of the table and Xiaohua snuggled up to the green plum wine on the table and was actually talking while boiling the wine. The crown prince said, "Don't take this matter to heart, ninth brother. Imperial father only misunderstood you because he believed the slanderous words of a lowly person. As time passes in the future, the misunderstanding will be resolved and he will naturally treat you the same as before. Ninth brother, why must you give up on yourself?" Fu Xiuyi shook his head. "Eldest brother, do not know the bitterness in my heart. An unexpected calamity has come and it is unavoidable. I am an idle person and have no interest in power or wealth. I just want to live a free life. In the past days, other than the matters in my hands, when have I ever interfered in other matters? But when the Shin family's matter happened, Imperial father still suspected me. This father-son relationship is just too cold." Ninth younger brother speak cautiously. The crown prince jumped in shock and quickly stopped Fu Xiuyi's unfinished words. "There is no lack of parents in the world. You are Imperial father's son, so Imperial father will not do anything to you. If one wants to blame those lowly people." The matter that they were talking about was the matter of the Shin family being searched and confiscated. Even though Emperor Wenhui hid it strictly, the various princes had informants in the palace. Moreover, with Shen Wan opening his mouth, the princes were very clear about the real reason of the Shin family's case. It was because of this that the princes looked at Fu Xiuyi differently. Originally, when the various princes fought for the heir apparent, they were fighting to the death and thought that the ninth prince had no great ambitions and was only happy being an idle Wangya. Thus they did not deliberately target Fu Xiuyi, who knew that when the matter came out, it was discovered that the other party had a chess piece buried in the dark. The most taboo thing in a fight was that the enemy was in the dark while one was in the light. Especially when it was a fight for the world, it was a big matter that one's life and family's lives would be lost if one was not careful. Prince Ding had been watching the fight in the dark for a long time. Perhaps he wanted to be the fisherman who benefits when the sandpiper and clam fight. Chapter 709. Previously everyone treated Prince Ding politely, but now when everyone looked at Fu Xiuyi, it was a common enemy. Fu Xiuyi had made too many enemies for himself in a short time. And after Fu Xiuyi became the brother's target, the first person he looked for was the crown prince. No matter if it was sincere or not, the crown prince was a soft-hearted master in front of everyone and was very kind but also easily deceived by others. Just like at this moment, he did not ridicule or attack but turned his head to comfort Fu Xiuyi. Fu Xiuyi smiled and said, "Never mind. Let's not talk about my matter and talk about eldest brother's matter." Meh. The crown prince was somewhat strange. What matter do I have? Now everyone is fighting till their heads are broken and bleeding. Eldest brother is obviously the most legitimate successor but was suppressed by others. This is not a good sign. Fu Xiuyi smiled. Initially I did not want to participate in these matters and deliberately avoided it, but did not think that others would come knocking on my door. Since it is so, it is better to take the initiative to come in. I intend to support eldest brother. The crown prince was surprised for a moment as he did not expect Fu Xiuyi to say that. He first smiled bitterly before shaking his head. Ninth younger brother has good intentions and I will not thank you. It is just that. Ninth younger brother also know my body. If I am strong and healthy, naturally I can fight for it, but with my body, it is a problem how long I can be popular. All these, it is better to leave it to fate. At the end of the words, there was a faint sense of despair. Eldest brother must not belittle yourself. Eldest brother is born of the Empress and is the eldest son of His Majesty and is also the crown prince. Logically speaking, you are the future master of Ming-Chi. If you were to let it go, one fear that others would laugh at Ming-Chi for not having people to carry on. But I really do not have any ability. The crown prince was somewhat disheartened. The officials see my body and are not willing to follow me. There are not many followers left in the past. Ninth younger brother let me fight, but other than the title of crown prince, what other ability do I have to fight? When Fu Xiuyi heard it, he poured a cup of wine for himself and the crown prince and took a sip before saying, "So at this time, eldest brother needs a strong assistant." The crown prince shook his head. A good bird chooses a tree to nest in. Why would those capable people choose me? Actually, eldest brother need not think so difficult. Fu Xiuyi said, "It is indeed difficult to find many powerful people. But to put it simply, as long as he could find a powerful helper, there was no need for other followers. In other words, as long as we find this person, the rest of the officials will also follow Big Brother." "Ninth brother, you're right," the crown prince said doubtfully. "Formidable great general Shen Xen." Fu Xiuyi answered. The crown prince paused. Shen Xen holds the military power in his hands, and at the front is the Shen family's army charging and at the back is the Luo family's army. After leaving the capital for 2 years, his prestige among the commoners did not decrease, and even the Qin country and the Great Liang have to be somewhat courteous. With General Shen's help, everyone would naturally have a higher opinion of the crown prince's strength. People always seek to go up, water flows down, so followers will naturally come after hearing the news. When the crown prince heard Fu Xiuyi's words, he smiled. Ninth younger brother said correctly. But ninth younger brother must know that now General Shen's reputation is illustrious and everyone's favorite. The rest of the brothers also think so, but why did the Shen family army choose me? Because you are the crown prince. Fu Xiuyi said calmly, if the rest of the brothers choose General Shen, one fear that they will violate Imperial Father's taboo, but eldest brother is different. You are the rightful successor to the Emperor's throne and also the son that Imperial Father values the most. If General Shen falls into your hands, it would be something that Imperial Father would be happy to see. To others it would be a disaster, but to you it would be a blessing. Such a big military power cannot fall into the hands of an outsider. The crown prince no longer laughed because Fu Xiuyi's words were very reasonable. Emperor Wen Hui was suspicious, for example Prince Zhou or Prince Li, or even Prince Ding. Fu Xiuyi, if he obtained Shen Xian's support, it would be a disaster for them, as Emperor Wen Hui would look at them with unfriendly eyes. But the Crown Prince was different. Emperor Wen Hui despised the Crown Prince's power for being too weak and unable to balance the other princes, not to mention that the Crown Prince was the future Crown Prince in Emperor Wen Hui's heart, so naturally he hoped to have a strong arm. But why would General Shin choose me? The Crown Prince still shook his head as if he did not agree with Fu Xiuyi's words. He said, participating in these matters is risky. General Shin does not need to wade into these muddy waters and he can live freely. Fu Xiuyi smiled and said, General Shin does not need to choose eldest brother, but young lady Shin can. The Crown Prince was surprised. Fu Xiuyi lightly said, the fifth young lady of the Shin family, the pearl of General Shin's palm, should be at the age of engagement. Chapter 710. 167-inch Shin family's young lady? The Crown Prince was first surprised for a moment before crying out involuntarily, Shin Miao? Fu Xiuyi looked at him but smiled and did not speak. Oh. The Crown Prince shook his head. The young lady of the Shin family is the pearl in General Shin's palm, and until now there is no engagement. One feared that he regards his daughter's lifelong event as very important, so how would he be willing to marry into the Eastern Palace? Moreover, the Crown Prince looked mischievously at Fu Xiuyi and said with a smile, everyone in the Ding capital knows that the one that the young lady of the Shin family admired was you, ninth younger brother. I cannot snatch away her affection. Fu Xiuyi smiled and shook his head. How would she admire me? It was only a joke when she was young. Otherwise all these years you see, how would she treat me with any feelings, and was even colder than an outsider. When the Crown Prince thought about it carefully, it was indeed so. In these 2 years, it seemed that when Shin Miao saw Fu Xiuyi, she did not seem to be as passionate as she was in the beginning. She was so cold that the two of them were very puzzled. Even though he said so, the Crown Prince still said, perhaps it is because you treat others unaffectedly that young lady Shin is angry with you. Big brother, please don't tease me. Fu Xiuyi smiled. Moreover, the Shin family is not a family that I can climb up to. I am willing to find a wife that does not have an illustrious identity, as it would be more comfortable. Speaking of which, Fu Xiuyi said seriously, why must eldest brother take action from General Shen and young lady Shin? It's best to leave this matter to Imperial Father. Father? Not bad. Fu Xiuyi saw that the wine cup in front of the Crown Prince was empty and filled the Crown Prince's wine cup before saying unhurriedly, Imperial Father dotes on eldest brother the most. Since Imperial Father has the heart to support eldest brother, one would definitely find a helper for eldest brother. If eldest brother wants to marry Shin young lady, Imperial Father would definitely be happy to see it happen. In this way, all we need is an imperial edict to bestow marriage and everything will be resolved. Ninth brother, your thinking is too simple. The Crown Prince shook his head. A melon that is forcefully picked will not be sweet. One must know that if the young lady of the Shin family is not willing to marry me, even if she had to enter the Eastern Palace because of the imperial edict, there would be resentment in the future. General Shin would have resentment towards Imperial Father and the marriage would not be successful and instead become enemies. That would be bad. Big brother, why do you think so? Fu Xiuyi looked at him in surprise. All the females in the world only seek for a rich and stable future. Marrying into the Eastern Palace, although she could not be the first consort, the status of the Crown Prince's secondary consort was not low. In the future, when eldest brother ascends the throne, the young lady of the Shin family will naturally be promoted to a consort. Eldest brother, you have a warm temperament, and as long as you treat the young lady of the Shin family well, in the future you will see a person's heart. How would she feel resentment towards eldest brother? Just like eldest sister-in-law when she married big brother, it was Imperial Father who bestowed this marriage upon her. But now she still wholeheartedly plans for big brother. When the Crown Prince heard it, he felt that Fu Xiuyi's words were somewhat reasonable. The Crown Princess had been betrothed by an imperial edict from the Emperor. Before this they had only met a few times. At first she was unwilling, but now she was deeply in love with the Crown Prince and always thought for him. Women are all like this. If you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If you marry a dog, follow the dog. As long as you treat her well, she will follow her husband with all her heart. Big brother is a dragon among men, how could he not be able to subdue a woman? The Crown Prince was somewhat embarrassed by Fu Xiuyi's words and waved his hands repeatedly. The two brothers had a heart-to-heart talk and exchanged cups, and were extremely happy and harmonious. It was just that when it was deep into the night, after Fu Xiuyi left the Eastern Palace, The drunkenness on the crown prince's face was swept away and was replaced with some sobriety. The advisor walked out from the back and looked at the crown prince probingly. "Your Highness, just now Ninth Highness words." Chapter 7:11. Ninth younger brother is trying to steal a peach to exchange a plum. The crown prince smiled and drank a cup of wine. He smiled and said, "He does have some courage. Now that father is suspicious of him, he actually dares to come to the Eastern Palace to express his goodwill and try to curry favor with us." Looking at it this way, it was us brothers who had underestimated him. "Then what does your Highness think about the Ninth Highness's proposal to let your Highness and the Shin family?" the advisor asked. The crown prince put down the wine cup in his hand and a flash of light flashed in his eyes. "Even though his heart is not right, there is a plan that can be used. I really need the strength of the Shin family. Shin Miao is a good chess piece and there is no harm in marrying her back." He smiled again. "Since she is not bad, there is no harm in coaxing her." The advisor nodded his head. "Your Highness has decided to agree?" The crown prince looked at the wine pot on the table. "This prince will personally mention the matter to imperial father in a few days. After the matter is done, one will remember ninth younger brother's favor." As what Fu Xiuyi expected, after a few days, the crown prince really mentioned the matter to Emperor Wenhui. Emperor Wenhui did not immediately agree but also did not reject it. He looked at the crown prince meaningfully and finally smiled. "Not bad. Zhen thought that you did not make any progress and finally you are aware of things." He then said, "Zhen will consider it." After the crown prince left, Emperor Wenhui then said to Su Gongong who was beside him, "The crown prince actually wanted to marry Shin Miao. Zhen did not expect it." Su Gongong said with a smile, "The Shin family's young lady's talent and appearance are all top-notch. The crown prince's eyesight is very good." "Forget it." Emperor Wenhui disdainfully said, "Zhen is not brainless. It is just that number 9 had pointed out a clear path for the crown prince this time. What is the meaning of this?" From his words, he knew that the marriage with the Shin family was Fu Xiuyi's idea. Su Gongong was cautious and did not speak. These imperial family matters were linked with a death word, so he as a servant would not dare to get involved. But it is just as well. Zhen originally wanted to support the crown prince. Prince Zhou and Prince Li are not putting Zhen in their eyes and Zhen cannot understand number 9. With the Shin family behind the crown prince, he can balance Prince Zhou and Prince Li and also control the Shin family's military power in his hands. Save Zhen's strength. It is just that. Emperor Wenhui looked at the scroll on the table and smiled before closing the booklet and stood up, set out to Kunning Palace. When Luo Shuiyan received the message from the people in the palace to bring Shin Miao to the palace tomorrow, she was very confused. She thought that there was a problem on Shin Xian's end. When she asked Shin Xian was also at a loss. The couple was always very cautious when it came to the royal family. But he was cautious in his heart and did not dare to show it to Shin Miao, fearing that Shin Miao would be afraid. Even though Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan said it in a relaxed manner, Shin Miao's heart could not relax at all. The Fu family would never allow Luo Shuiyan to bring her into the palace for no reason. But this time he had no clue what it was. Pei Lang had not sent her a letter for a long time and if there was a letter, she would be able to figure out Fu Xiuyi's next move. Shin Miao's heart suddenly moved. That's right, why did Pei Lang not send her a letter for such a long time? Even in the past, even if there was nothing major, Pei Lang would still maintain correspondence with her but after such a long time, a faint guess surfaced in Shin Miao's heart. Could it be that Pei Lang could not write to her anymore? Did Fu Xiuyi discover anything? Her heart was getting more and more confused. Ever since she met that inexplicable crazy Taoist in Pu Tuo Monastery, Shin Miao's heart found it hard to calm down. She wanted to know who was the benefactor who had the fate of fierce dragon subduing the heavens and also wanted to know who was the person who gave her the chance to start over again in her previous lifetime. But no matter how she thought about it, there was no clue and it made her even more impetuous. Chapter 7:12. Shin Miao involuntarily looked up at the window and saw that the window door was tightly shut. Xie Jingxing once said that in the future there was no need to open the window and he would be able to come but these few days Xie Jingxing did not appear. Shin Miao draped her outer clothes and walked to the window before opening it. It was the cold night wind outside and Shin Miao tightened her clothes. Suddenly a figure flashed in front of her as Tsong Yang stood up from under the wall and looked at Shin Miao before asking, "Young lady is looking for master?" Shin Miao was caught off guard and jumped in shock. She patted her chest in annoyance and said unhappily, "No." Song Yang did not seem to have heard Shin Miao's words and continued speaking in a deadpan manner. "Master is currently not in the Ding capital, so young lady need not wait for him here." "I'm not waiting for him," Shin Miao emphasized. "I am just taking a breather." Song Yang did not speak and Shin Miao thought of something and asked, "Song Yang, if I enter the palace, can you enter together?" When Song Yang heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Then he blushed and said, "This subordinate is not from the palace and is not familiar with the layout of the palace. If I follow Miss In, there will be no place to hide and I am not confident that I will not be discovered." Shin Miao's eyes drooped down. Since Song Yang did not have the confidence to not be discovered by others, then forget about it. He thought about it again. No matter what the imperial family was up to, they would not do it openly in the palace. After all, Luo Shuiyan was there. Thinking of this, he felt relieved and said, "It's fine now. If young lady has anything to say, you can tell this subordinate and this subordinate will bring the letter to master." Song Yang looked at Shin Miao and spoke to himself. Shin Miao closed the window with a pa sound. Like subordinates like masters, they didn't listen to others at all. At the other end, in the residence of Prince Rui, Gao Yang and Ji Yushu were studying a map. There were many densely marked places on the map and if one looked carefully, one could clearly see that it was a military defense map. The guard outside came to report, "Gao Darren, young Master Ji, young Lady Shen will enter the palace tomorrow. Do you want to bring a letter to His Highness?" "Enter the palace?" Ji Yushu asked. "What matter is there?" The guard shook his head. Ji Yushu sighed. These few days one was busy with this drawing and did not help third older brother to look after Shin young lady. It would be bad if third older brother returns, one would not know anything and both you and I will be out of luck. He nudged Gao Yang. "You have people in the palace. Has anything happened recently?" "It's nothing." Gao Yang thought for a moment and said, "Don't bring it into the letter yet. He's busy with work and it's not good to be distracted. Since there's no news from Song Yang, it shouldn't be too serious. If something really happened, we'll just have to stop it." The guard received the order and left. Ji Yushu looked at Gao Yang. "Why do I feel that your method is not appropriate?" "What's wrong with it?" Gao Yang said impatiently. "Look at the picture." Ji Yushu muttered, "Anyway, if anything happens and third older brother asks why I did not inform in time, I will just say that it was you who instructed." On the second day, Shin Miao followed Luo Shuiyan into the palace. Every time he entered the palace, something would happen. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat vigilant but Shin Miao was used to it. Because she already knew that the Tian family did not have good intentions, it made her less nervous. The palace maids brought them directly to Kuaning Palace. When they reached Kuaning Palace, the first thing they saw was the Empress who was sitting on the main seat. The concubine sitting beside the Empress had a gentle smile and her clothes were elegant but simple. It was Consort Dongshu. The Empress and Consort Dongshu? Shin Miao's heart suddenly jumped up. The Empress was the birth mother of the Crown Prince and had a conforming husband and wife relationship with Emperor Wenhui. But the Empress herself most likely came from a wealthy family and had a smooth journey. At the current stage, she was wholeheartedly focused on the Crown Prince's body and had no heart to fight for power in the inner palace. It was said that she was swift and decisive, but at the end she could not win against Consort Dongshu, who was the most inconspicuous. Chapter 713. Consort Dongshu had always stayed out of the matters in the inner palace, just like Fu Xiu-yi, watching the other consorts fight until their heads were broken and bleeding. Oh, naturally there was another point. Among them, she had unknowingly contributed a little bit of strength, and it was that little bit of strength that often pushed the matter to the worst direction. Getting someone else to do his dirty work? No one played better than Consort Dongshu. If one were to say that Mei Furen was brazen and arrogant, then Consort Dongshu was warm and gentle, smiling as she handed over a knife. So this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law felt like old friends at first sight. Consort Dongshu looked down on Shin Miao but admired Mei Furen very much. Shin Miao looked at the situation in front and knew that the Empress would be used by Consort Dongshu as a knife again. After all, Consort Dongshu was the kind of person who would give herself a lot of benefits no matter what she did. The Empress smiled as she bestowed a seat to Luo Shuiyan but beckoned to Shin Miao to come forward. Shin Miao went forward as instructed and the Empress sized her up carefully before smiling in satisfaction and said to Consort Dongshu, "It is a neat and tidy person." Luo Shuiyan was somewhat restless and could not wait to grab Shin Miao and step out of the palace doors. But as an official there was too much helplessness. She didn't know what the Empress was planning, but as a mother she had a natural intuition, especially when it came to people who had designs on their children. "How old are you?" asked the queen. "Replying to your ladyship, this official's daughter is 16. Shen Miao answered. The Empress smiled as she held Shen Miao's hands. When Ben Gong was in the palace, one had heard that General Shen's daughter is talented and beautiful. He had met her at the palace banquet and found her to be extremely charming. Thinking of these few days of leisure time, I asked Shen Furen to bring young Lady Shen into the palace to see her. She sighed. Born to be so bright and intelligent at the age of 16, one do not know which family's young master has such good fortune to be able to marry the young lady of the Shen family as his wife. Luo Shuiyan's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately clenched her fists. Shen Miao's heart moved, but she had already understood the reason why the Empress called them to the palace today. Consort Dong Shu also laughed. Isn't that so? She's beautiful and well-behaved, and doesn't have the slightest bit of arrogance about her. It's rare to see girls like her nowadays. I wonder if Shen Furen and young Lady Shen is already engaged? The Empress asked with a smile. Luo Shuiyan's heart was conflicted for a moment, but she quickly replied, I'm not afraid that your ladyship will laugh at me. Recently, I've been looking for a suitable marriage between young master and my daughter. If the imperial family had this idea, then one feared that they had clearly inquired about Shen Miao's current situation. However, he did not dare to lie to them. Otherwise he would be making a fool out of the royal family. So it is like this. The Empress' smile became wider. Then how about Ben Gong be the matchmaker for Shen young lady? No. Luo Shuiyan said without thinking. Seeing the Empress's unfriendly expression, she explained, My daughter is still young, and I cannot bear to marry her off. I still want to keep her for a few more years. When the Empress heard it, she smiled again and said, Shen Furen's words are not right. It is said that females cannot be kept as they will become enemies. If you keep delaying young Lady Shen's marriage, one fear that young Lady Shen will blame you in the future. Am I right, Miss Shen? Shen Miao glanced at the Empress and smiled. This official's daughter also want to accompany by mother's side. She did not give any face to the Empress at all. The Empress' smile was not that refreshing. She stared at Shen Miao and did not know if Shen Miao did not have a brain so she dared to be so arrogant or if she was deliberately slapping her face. Thinking that such a female would be her daughter-in-law, the Empress' heart was not happy. It was Consort Dong Shu who saw that the atmosphere was somewhat stiff and smiled to ease it. Shen Furen and young Lady Shen have a deep relationship between mother and daughter that makes one envious. But she changed the topic of conversation. Females would always have to marry. It is not that after marriage one cannot have a deep relationship. Chapter 7:14. These words were said to smooth things over, but unfortunately Luo Shuiyan and Shen Miao did not continue Consort Dong Shu's words. Consort Dong Shu's heart was somewhat surprised. Previously when Shen Miao was infatuated with Fu Xiu-yi, Consort Dong Shu thought that Shen Miao was a brainless idiot female, but after looking at it, she felt that it was not the case. One felt that Shen Miao was after all somewhat intelligent and was able to distinguish between what was important and what was not. Who knew that after seeing them today, they were indeed the biological daughter of Luo Shuiyan. Both mother and daughter were equally unruly, unmoved by force or persuasion. The Empress also did not seem to be used to deliberately getting close to others, especially when the other party's attitude was not warm. But today she only wanted to break in advance, and let the Shen family be prepared. Actually the Empress did not care what the Shen family's attitude was. No matter how courageous Shen Xian was or how much he loved his daughter, it was impossible for him to defy the edict. The arm was no match for the thigh. Under imperial power, everyone had to lower their heads. Thus after a lukewarm chat, he let Luo Shuiyan and Shen Miao go back. On the way back Luo Shuiyan did not say a word. Shen Miao was also thinking about her own matters, and this kind of silent atmosphere scared Jingzhe and Guyu as they thought that something had happened. Upon returning to the Shen mansion, Shen Qiu and Luo Ling had just returned from the Ministry of War and asked the Empress why did she summon them to the palace. Luo Shuiyan vaguely responded and pulled Shen Xian back to the room. Once they entered the room, Luo Shuiyan told Shen Xian what the Empress had said to her in the palace today. At the end she asked, I see that the Empress' intention is to appoint a marriage for Jiao Jiao. What should be done? Shen Xian's face had long sunk as he said, Arranged marriage? Why should my daughter marry them? Jiao Jiao has been raised by us. What right do others have to give advice on Jiao Jiao's marriage? I'm guessing that the Empress wants Jiao Jiao to marry the Crown Prince. Luo Shuiyan said, today both openly and secretly she mentioned that the Crown Prince's health has improved and mentioned it several times. This was unacceptable. The Crown Prince already had a Crown Princess. If Jiao Jiao married over, she would at most be a side concubine. A side concubine was just a concubine with a slightly higher status. I didn't want Jiao Jiao to have to serve tea and greet other women after marrying over. Thinking of this, my heart felt suffocated. Besides, so what if the Crown Prince has a high status and a good character? With his body, I don't dare to hand Jiao Jiao over to him. No matter which prince it is, Jiao Jiao cannot marry. The foul air in Shen Xan's chest was unable to be released and he simply slammed his fist on the table, causing the cup to shake a little. You are afraid that if Jiao Jiao marries over, our entire Shen family will be involved in the fight for the throne? Luo Shuiyan said, that's right. In these days, these people have ulterior motives and once they are involved with the imperial family, the Shen family would not be able to escape in the future. That's not the reason. Shen Xan gave a long sigh. The sons of the imperial family are fickle and have many wives and concubines. If Jiao Jiao were to marry in, she would not be happy. Even if the Crown Prince becomes the emperor in the future, so what? Even if his body is healthy, so what? 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, 72 concubines, reign and do all over. I don't want Jiao Jiao to live that kind of life. Moreover, as you said, they don't really want to marry Jiao Jiao. My son-in-law does not need to be bestowed the title of prince or minister, and does not need to wear brocade hat and marten coat, but he must treat Jiao Jiao wholeheartedly. If he cannot do this, then even the heavenly king would not do. When Shen Miao, who was eavesdropping outside the door, heard this sentence, there was a sudden surge of warmth in her heart. In this world, there were still relatives who would support her unconditionally. They were willing to offend the nobles but were not willing to let her suffer a little grievance. One heard Luo Shuiyan speaking again, that's right. Since that is the case, Jiao Jiao must not marry into the Eastern Palace. It is just that when the imperial edict comes down, things would be bad. What should be done now? Chapter 7:15. Shen Xan frowned and thought for a while before saying, before the imperial edict comes, quickly marry Jiao Jiao off. However, in such a short period of time, even an engagement would be very difficult. He also didn't know what kind of person the other party was. No matter what, tonight I will get people to look for some young talents and if there are some with good character as long as Jiao Jiao is not disgusted, then settle it first. Shen Xan said, in short, one cannot let Jiao Jiao marry into the imperial family. Shen Miao did not know what kind of feeling she had in her heart. The voices in the room gradually became smaller and should be discussing which young talents were reliable. Shen Miao straightened up and was about to turn around to return to her own room when she turned around to see Xin Qiu and Luo Ling standing behind her. Both of them were frowning and one did not know when they stood there and how much they heard. Xin Qiu pulled Shen Miao and walked out. Until they walked to Shen Miao's courtyard, Xin Qiu and Luo Ling entered the room and let the maids out before closing the door. Younger sister, the Empress wants to bestow marriage to the Crown Prince? It seemed that he had heard it. Shen Miao did not intend to hide it and nodded her head. Xin Qiu slammed his fist on the table and gritted his teeth. You're going too far. Shen Miao laughed in spite of herself and said, how many people want to climb up the high branches of the Eastern Palace, but when it comes to you, it becomes bullying. Eldest brother's eyesight is too high. In this way the entire Ding capital's people are not able to enter your eyes. Xin Qiu unhappily said, Jiao Jiao, why are you so big-hearted? I am worried for you but you are actually laughing at me. Luo Ling looked at Shen Miao and asked warmly, what does Biao younger sister think of this matter? Shen Miao shrugged her shoulders, one has to do one's best and know one's destiny. Biao younger sister does not object? Luo Ling's tone was somewhat inexplicable. Father and mother have already found a way out for me. Shen Miao said indifferently as if the discussion was not about her marriage. She said, find some young talents that I find suitable, and quickly get engaged before the imperial edict reaches the Shen mansion. That will do. She smiled and said, don't worry. My taste isn't as high as big brother's. It shouldn't be difficult to find a suitable one. Xin Qiu mumbled, don't know which family's brat got the advantage. Shen Miao pretended not to hear it. Luo Ling walked a step closer and asked, if one is not found suitable or before that, the imperial edict comes down, what about Biao younger sister? Xin Qiu said, Biao younger brother, how can you say such unlucky words? Luo Ling however was still staring at Shin Miao, as if he was persistent in seeking an answer from Shin Miao. Shin Miao smiled and said, "Then marry me." Shin Xiu shouted. "Otherwise what?" Shin Miao said, "Could it be that the entire Shin family have to bear the crime of defying the edict and be annihilated? Because of me all my loved ones are implicated? Just because I was stubborn and refused to marry, my family suffered because of me. Big brother, is this what you want to see? Brother, let me ask you, if you were me or if the Empress wanted to marry you, what would you do? You would also say that you would rather die than marry?" Shin Xiu fell silent. If it was him, he would accept this marriage for Shin Miao and his parents. If sacrificing himself could bring peace to the entire mansion, Shin Xiu felt that there was nothing he couldn't do. "Big brother will be like me, right?" Shin Miao said lightly, "Not everyone in the world can do their own things as they wish. Everyone have their own choice. One will do one's best to know one's destiny, and I will try my best to avoid this result. If it cannot be avoided, then it is not a big deal. If one marries, then so be it." Shin Miao looked at Shin Xiu. "A husband, a marriage, in my heart it is not as important as one's loved ones. But that is the happiness of your life." Shin Xiu's eyes were somewhat sour. He did not know why his younger sister's expression was so cold when she talked about marriage and husbands, and even had some disgust. But he instinctively felt that Shin Miao, at the age of a young female, did not have the expectations and dreams that a young female should have, and that was because he did not take good care of his younger sister. Happiness is to be fought for by oneself and not depend on someone to obtain it. Shin Miao said, "Could it be that marrying a good person can guarantee my lifetime of happiness? No matter if it is the crown prince or other people, is there anyone who can be sure that in the next few decades he would not take in concubines and be fickle? I do not believe." "Younger sister, you cannot think like this. You are not married yet and cannot think of others so scary and cannot see vicissitudes of life. Just like a married woman who had seen thousands of ships." Luo Ling however looked at Shin Miao thoughtfully and moved his lips but in the end did not say anything. Shin Miao's eyes drooped. Husband? Marriage? In her previous life she had suffered a terrible setback because of this. To her, this was a word that carried the weight of pain. Do not fall at the same place twice. Without expectations there would not be any harm. Her smile was cold. "It is not that I am thinking too badly, but Big Brother is thinking too complicatedly. It is only marrying. Females all have to marry, and if one marries well, one would have a peaceful life. Even if one does not live well in the residence of the Crown Prince, I will not let the person who hurt me live well." Chapter 7:16. The news that the Empress suddenly revealed made the Shin family fall into an anxious situation. There was no doubt that Shin Xian and wife were not willing for Shin Miao to marry into the imperial family. The most ruthless imperial family, other than many political considerations, it was also because of the complexity of the imperial family's inner courtyard. If Shin Miao were to marry in, there would be intrigue and it would not be easy. Compared to this, glory, splendor, wealth, and supreme honor were not worth it. Shin Xian had the intention to marry Shin Miao out before the imperial edict. Originally before entering the palace because of Su Furan's matter, Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan had discussed to start paying attention to Shin Miao's lifelong matter. Luo Shuiyan even ordered the servants to specially make a booklet, and on it were all the young talents in the Ding capital. The booklet recorded in detail these people's character, where they lived, how many people were in the house and how many places were in their hometown. Luo Shuiyan also beat around the bush to inquire about Shin Miao's intentions, and when she heard that Shin Miao did not mind this way of looking at her husband, she was relieved and really intended to help Shin Miao look for a match. The Shin family held great power in the Ding capital and was a very special existence in Emperor Wen Hui's eyes, thus it was not easy to casually pick the family. Shin Xian did not even consider those officials who already had monstrous power because it was to prevent Emperor Wen Hui from thinking that they were deliberately forming an alliance. Thus Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xian picked those families that were above average, did not have any ambition and were upright aristocratic families. Shin Qiu was a forthright person and had a group of good brothers in the Ministry of War that could help him to inquire about these people's character in private. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan had such plans for Shin Miao, but it was out of their expectations that whenever Shin Xian revealed a little bit of intention to marry, the other party would smile and decline. It was either that their son was already engaged or that they were not in a hurry to marry a wife. Shin Xian had a violent temper and also loved Shin Miao in his palms. Others did not fancy Shin Miao, but Shin Xian also did not fancy others, thus he would brush his sleeves and leave. But in the end it was always this kind of situation. Those talented youths that they had taken a liking to with great difficulty would all find excuses to decline. One or two of them would be a coincidence, but if there were too many, it would make people feel that something was wrong. Shin Xan also sensed that something was not right, and it was a military general who was on good terms with Shin Xan who told him that the current court officials knew that the imperial family had the intention to introduce Shin Miao to the current His Highness the Son of Heaven. Shin Xan was looking for in-laws for Shin Miao, but who would dare to fight for a woman for the imperial family? By marrying over, Shin Miao would escape the fate of marrying into the Eastern Palace, but it would also make the imperial family unhappy with Shin Miao's in-laws. It was all for self-protection. Even if the Shin family had a big business and Shin Miao was intelligent and steady, no one would dare to marry her. When Shin Xian heard of the news in the residence, he immediately flew into a rage and said that he originally saw that those noble families did not associate with the secular world, but did not expect that they were all cowards. It was fortunate that Shin Miao was not married to them, otherwise how would they be able to support Shin Miao in the future? When Shin Miao heard the information that Bai Lu and Shuangjiang inquired, she only smiled faintly. Jingzhe anxiously said, "Why is young lady not anxious? Now foreign and master are extremely anxious, and if this goes on, even if the imperial edict was not sent down, they would not be able to find a suitable person. The Fu family are not fools." Shin Miao picked up the hot tea on the table and took a sip. How would one not know what father and mother are planning? Shin Miao knew from the beginning that Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan's method would not work. As for how the news of her marrying the crown prince was spread out, needless to say, it was naturally the imperial family's doing. The imperial family practically announced to the world that Shin Miao was the person that they fancied. How would the officials of Mingqi dare to openly go against the imperial family to snatch a person? Thus Shin Xian and wife's plan to let Shin Miao marry out as soon as possible was destined to fail. Chapter 717. Gu Yu's throat was somewhat sour as she said, "Could it be that young lady really want to marry His Highness the Crown Prince?" As personal maids, even though Jingzhe and Gu Yu could not understand what Shin Miao was thinking, they could more or less feel some of Shin Miao's feelings. For example, Shin Miao did not like the imperial palace at all and did not like the people in the imperial palace. Now if Shin Miao were to marry into the Eastern Palace, she would definitely not be comfortable. Shin Miao said, "Let's go and see." But in her heart she was thinking that she would never want to marry again in the imperial family of Mingqi. It was just an imperial edict that could control him and control the land. If it was really not possible, she would ruin her own reputation. The Fu family kept saying that they wanted the Shin family's military power, but they dared not show their true colors to the outside world. When Shin Miao's reputation was ruined, if the crown prince still insisted on marrying her, it would be too unsightly. Which was more important, a green hat or military power? From Shin Miao's understanding of the Fu family, it was definitely the military power that was more important. But if he really did not hesitate to wear a green hat to marry her, the commoners would not feel that the Fu family had deep sentiments but would feel that the imperial inner palace was in a mess. Even if the Fu family did not have the hearts of the people, they would not dare to let the rumors spread. It was just that. Shin Miao stared at the floating tea leaves in the teacup and her reputation would similarly be ruined. Fortunately she did not have any sisters and would not implicate her sisters to be ridiculed like her. Unfortunately, Shin Xian and the rest would definitely suffer the finger-pointing of others. But this was the last resort and also the only way. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not know that Shin Miao already had her own ideas and were still thinking about finding a good husband for Shin Miao. But the imperial family's message had already spread out and even the Iceman did not dare to accept the Shin family's business. Thus the Shin family was recently deserted. Shin Qiu almost went to kidnap a good friend to marry Shin Miao. After being stopped by Luo Shuiyan, Shin Qiu, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xan sat in the room, and when they talked about Shin Miao's marriage, their faces were filled with worry. Luo Shuiyan said, "This move of the imperial family is really too despicable. Previously there were so many people who wanted to claim marriage with us, but now they all took a detour. What is this? It's all my fault." Shin Xan said, "One should have arranged a marriage for Jiao Jiao in the beginning. One thought that she was young and it would not be a problem to wait for a few more years, but one did not expect to fall into the trap." Shin Qiu scratched his head. "No matter what, younger sister cannot marry into the crown prince residence. A girl raised by our generals Fu, why should she be someone's side fei? We even have to pick and choose to be the main wife, how could she be someone's side fei?" Now that no one dares to marry into our family, what should we do? Luo Shuiyan's expression was somewhat anxious as she probed, why not go outside the Ding capital to look for a suitable family? Xinqiu was surprised. Mother, you want to marry younger sister far away? Luo Shuiyan said in a bad mood, I also have no other choice. One fear that all the officials in the Ding capital know about this matter, and perhaps it has spread outside of the Ding capital. One have to find some remote places that do not know about this matter. No. Shin Xen flatly refused. If one were to marry far away, it would only inconvenience Jiao Jiao. Moreover, the mountain is high and the road is far. If the in-laws bully her, what can be done if we are far away in the Ding capital and are unable to help? Luo Shuiyan was annoyed. This cannot be done, that cannot be done. What do you say? Xinqiu sighed. In the end, these people in the Ding capital are afraid of implicating themselves. Could it be that there is no male who values younger sister more than his own life? Seeing Luo Shuiyan staring at him, Xinqiu quickly added, other than me and father. Just as he was speaking, one saw Luo Ling walking in from outside. Luo Shuiyan called him to sit down and asked eagerly, Linger, have you found a suitable family today? Chapter 7:18. Luo Ling shook his head. Shin Xian and Xinqiu were somewhat disappointed. Luo Shuiyan also lowered her head and looked worriedly at the teacup in front of her. In the silence, one heard Luo Ling softly saying, Gugu Gufu Biao older brother. The three of them looked up and saw that Luo Ling's expression was somewhat strange, like he wanted to say something but stopped. Xinqiu asked, younger Biao brother, what happened to you? If you have anything to say, just say it. We're all family here. Luo Ling took a deep breath and said, until now younger Biao sister still have not found a suitable person? Luo Shuiyan shook her head and said, these people in the Ding capital are all afraid of the imperial family finding trouble with them, and can't wait to stay far away from the Shin family. It is really too difficult to find a suitable person who is willing to marry Jiao Jiao at this juncture. Then, Luo Ling paused for a moment before plucking up his courage to speak, I am willing to marry younger Biao's sister. As soon as these words were spoken, the room immediately became silent. Even the servant girls at the side didn't dare to speak and quietly retreated to the side. Xinqiu and Shin Xian stared closely at Luo Ling, but Luo Ling seemed to have suddenly gained courage and continued to speak. I know that my right hand is not good now, and in terms of family background and looks, there are many people who are better than me in the Ding capital, but I am willing to marry younger Biao's sister. I will always treat her well and not take in any concubines or tongfang, and only her alone in the inner courtyard. Moreover, Luo Ling smiled gently, if Gugu and Gugufu are worried that there will be any movements from the imperial family, I can bring her back to the Shaochun city. Father, mother and great-grandfather are all there, and they will take care of younger Biao's sister and not let younger Biao's sister suffer grievances. Gugu and Gufu will be able to return to the Shaochun city to visit Biao younger sister during the next expedition. Biao younger brother, you? Xinqiu was speechless. Not only Xinqiu, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xian were also stunned. Luo Ling's words were said in a plain and simple manner, and there were no fancy promises, but it was in sincerity. Before that, it was not that Luo Shuiyan did not think about these two children, but seeing that Shin Miao seemed to only have a sibling relationship with Luo Ling, she did not think more about it. But now the circumstances were different. Compared to the crown prince, Luo Ling was the best ending. It could be said that Shin Xian and wife watched Luo Ling grow up. His character was upright and gentle and was good at accommodating others, so he could accommodate Shin Miao. He was also her eldest brother's son, which was equivalent to a family. If Shin Miao were to marry over, she would not have to suffer any difficulties from her father-in-law and mother-in-law. With Luo Lianying's and Madame Yu's love for Shin Miao, one could say that they would be biased towards Shin Miao. The most important thing was that Luo Ling could bring Shin Miao back to the Shaochun city. The heavens were high and the emperor was far away, so no matter how dissatisfied the imperial family was, they would not be able to do anything, so it was just right for Shin Miao to avoid the limelight. As the fight for the throne between the princes became more intense, the situation in Mingqi became more complicated and the Ding capital became more dangerous. Shin Xen himself could not leave the Ding capital due to his military power, but he did not wish to involve his pair of children into the dangerous whirlpool. Xinqiu was a male and had entered officialdom, so he could no longer escape, but for Shin Miao, Shin Xen always hoped that she would be able to lead a peaceful and smooth life. Marrying into the Luo family was indeed a good choice. Shin Xn stared at Luo Ling and his words were somewhat sharp. Linger, now you marry Jiao Jiao in order to solve the difficulties, but one cannot guarantee that in the future you will meet a young lady that you fancy. What will you do at that time? There was some probing meaning in these words, but Luo Ling suddenly blushed. His face was slightly red, but he still insisted, one would not meet a young lady that I fancy? The one that I fancy is only younger Biao's sister. When Xinqiu heard it, he was suddenly overjoyed and patted Luo Ling's shoulder. So to say you have long fancied younger sister? Luo Shuiyan was also somewhat surprised. Luo Ling's character was gentle and self-restrained and did not reveal his emotions. Even though he treated Xin Miao well on normal days, Luo Shuiyan thought that it was just an elder brother taking care of his younger sister. She did not think that Luo Ling would have such intentions. Chapter 719. Luo Ling nodded his head. You're really lucky, you stinking brat. Xinqiu was suddenly slightly dissatisfied and spoke resentfully. Shut up, Qiu'er. Luo Shuiyan glared at Xinqiu and looked at Luo Ling. The more she looked, the more satisfied she was. Shen Xian and Xinqiu, however, did not have a good feeling as their emotions were extremely complicated. Both father and son were not happy that no one married Xin Miao, but they were also unhappy that someone married. Especially Shen Xian, he felt that he had brought up his beautiful daughter to marry this brat in front of him. He felt that Luo Ling's nose was not his nose and his eyes were not his eyes. Xinqiu said, I did not say anything wrong. If this matter did not happen to our Jiao Jiao, one could casually pick any of the Ding capital's disciples and it would not be too much to pick a heavenly immortal. Who knew that something like this would happen? Cousin got lucky, I don't know what good karma he accumulated in his previous life. Luo Shuiyan was furious. Brat, try talking nonsense again. No ivory comes out of a filthy mouth. Luo Ling smiled, older Biao brother is right, it is my fortune to be able to marry Jiao Jiao, but, he said, one still have to ask younger Biao sister's opinion on this matter. If Biaomei is unwilling, then there is no need to mention this matter again. In the end, he still had to respect Xin Miao's wishes. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. To marry or not to marry, at the end it all depended on Xin Miao's attitude. But with the current situation, one think that Xin Miao would not hesitate to choose to marry Luo Ling. After all, it did not seem to suit Xin Miao's preference to be a Sufei in the Eastern Palace. Moreover, compared to the Crown Prince, Luo Ling's appearance was handsome and his temperament was gentle and tolerant, obviously more in line with the appearance of a husband. Luo Shuiyan said, don't belittle yourself. No matter what, your uncle, your cousin, and I will always be on your side. Shen Xian and Xinqiu were very dissatisfied with being represented by Luo Shuiyan, but they did not refute. While they were discussing this matter, a manservant suddenly came to report, Master and Madam, someone is looking for you at the door. These few days, because of Xin Miao's matter, those people in the Ding capital who had some friendship with the Shen family avoided them and would not take the initiative to visit, thus one did not expect that there would be people who came to look for them at this time. Xinqiu asked casually, who? The manservant said, it's Madame Countess of Pingnan. Everyone, when Su Foran entered the room, she did not expect Xinqiu and Shen Xian to be there. Speaking of which, she was still a little afraid of Shen Xian. Because in the early years Shen Xian and Su Yu did not have a good political opinion, Shen Xian did not treat Su Yu well. Naturally, Su Yu did not think much of Shen Xian, let alone Madame Su. This time, if it was not because of Su Mingfeng, Su Foran would not be able to enter the Shen family's doors in this lifetime. Luo Shuiyan invited Su Foran to sit down and Su Foran greeted Shen Xian. Looking at Xinqiu with a smile, he said, this must be the eldest young master of the residence. He is indeed a young and talented man with extraordinary looks. One look and one can tell that he is not an ordinary man. Xinqiu repeatedly said that he did not dare. Su Foran then looked at Luo Ling and asked with a smile, this one? Luo Shuiyan explained, this is my maiden family's eldest brother's son Luo Ling. Su Foran's gaze towards Luo Ling was somewhat strange and asked without batting an eyelid, then does this Biao young master currently have a marriage partner? Replying to Foran's words, not yet. Luo Ling replied politely. Following that, he looked at Su Foran with some puzzlement. Most likely he did not understand why this matron, whom he had just met for the first time, would ask him about a marriage partner, as it was somewhat abrupt. The more polite Luo Ling was, the more strange Su Foran's gaze towards him was. Upon closer inspection, there was even some hostility. Naturally, others could not make heads or tails of it, but who knew that Su Foran was complaining incessantly in her heart. One did not think that there was such a young master in the Shin family. Looking at this young master's appearance, he was sensible and well-mannered, so it was not bad. One had to know that it was easy for something to happen between Biao brothers and Biao sisters. Shin Miao was still young and not sensible, so she might be cheated by this Biao older brother. As such, would Su Mingfeng still have a chance? Su Foren suddenly roused herself and was determined to fight for her son. Chapter 720. Because Shin Xian and the rest were males, it was not good for them to sit and listen to females, so they got up and left. Only Luo Shuiyan and Su Foren were left in the main hall. Luo Shuiyan asked with a smile, "Su Foren's visit today, is there any important matter?" She did not even send an invitation and was somewhat anxious. Luo Shuiyan had a faint guess in her heart but did not dare to think too deeply and only thought that she was imagining things. Su Foren said seriously, "The matter that I mentioned to Foren a few days ago, what is Foren's current consideration?" Luo Shuiyan was startled. The matter that was mentioned a few days ago? What was the matter that was mentioned a few days ago? Was it the marriage between Su Mingfeng and Shin Miao? Luo Shuiyan could not help but be somewhat frightened as she said, "Could it be that Su Foren did not hear the recent rumors in the marketplace?" Even though she also hoped that there would be people coming to marry Shin Miao, and the more the better, so that Shin Miao would have more choices, but she did not wish to hide it from the other and let the other be unlucky, thus her words were frank. Su Foren said, "What rumors?" Luo Shuiyan's heart hardened and simply said, "It is the rumors that the crown prince has the heart to marry our daughter into the residence." "So it is this matter." Su Foren smiled, "I heard about it. The young lady of the Shen family has outstanding character and looks that even the imperial family keeps thinking about her." When Su Foren said this, there was no trace of shyness in her expression and was even more magnanimous than Luo Shuiyan. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat unable to understand. Was Su Foren's heart a little too big? Did she not understand the meaning of the imperial family's preference for Shin Miao, or did she not care at all? "After hearing about this matter, are you still considering the marriage between the young master of the Su family and my daughter?" Luo Shuiyan asked. "Naturally one has to consider." Su Foren nodded her head. "One cannot be so overbearing. One cannot only let the Su family fancy young lady Shin and not allow other families to fancy young lady Shin, right? Foren, our Su family's temperament is honest and sincere and not so overbearing." Luo Shuiyan felt that Su Foren's thoughts were not on the same point as her, so she made it clear to her in detail. She said, "The crown prince has the intention to take my daughter into the Eastern Palace. Because we are both mothers, I won't hide it from Foren. My daughter doesn't want to be a side fae, so she wants to get married early. However, since this rumor had already spread out, those who had been looking for her previously tried their best to reject it. Madam also understands that whoever dares to marry my daughter at this time would be going against the imperial family and angering the imperial family. I'm afraid they will suffer in the future. Madam Su, do you understand what I mean now? Do you still want to get married?" His words were sincere and he didn't hide anything. He directly exposed the disadvantages to the other party. Madame Su, on the other hand, slowly smiled and said, "Madam, do you think I am an idiot and can't even understand such a small matter?" Luo Shuiyan was even more confused now. Why did he still want to get married after knowing the disadvantages? Is the Su family not afraid of getting into trouble? "I won't hide it from Madam." Su Foren said with a smile, "The current situation in the Ding capital is too complicated. My master often say the words avoid calamity. Most likely he is thinking of not coming out to avoid these worldly matters. In the past 2 years, the Count of Pingnan's family had already withdrawn from the affairs of the imperial court. Speaking of which, since they had pretty much cut themselves off from the official family, they did not have to worry so much about doing things. The reason why I wanted this marriage was naturally because I know of the dangers involved. But who let Mingfeng like it?" Luo Shuiyan's eyes widened and cried out involuntarily, "Like?" She had always thought that the words that Su Foren said that day were just polite words or something that was made up to brush her off. Now looking at Su Foren's expression, it did not seem to be fake. "Of course." Su Foren said, "If it is not because Mingfeng likes it, why would I keep pestering Madam?" She sighed, "I have never seen Mingfeng like any young lady before, but know that this son of mine is a stubborn one. Once he likes something, it would be too late to change it. Since he likes Shin young lady, it would be very difficult to like other young lady in the future. One fear that he would walk into a dead end, it would be better to fulfill his wish." Su Foren looked down at her fingertips. Because of the Su family's relationship, Ming Feng can only hide and not be able to display his skills in his career. It is already us who have let him down. If one were to not let him have his wish in the marriage, Master and I would feel that we owe him and would not be able to make it up in this lifetime. Chapter 721. As Luo Shuiyan listened, she gradually felt a sense of melancholy in her heart. They were both mothers, so naturally they could understand each other. She heard Su Furen continue, "But don't worry, madam. Although our Su family is no longer an official's family, we still have enough money. We also have many shops, so we won't have to worry about food and drink. After young lady Xin marries over, Master and I will treat her as our own daughter." Ming Feng's character is old-fashioned and honest, thus there would not be any other female in the inner courtyard. The population is simple, and even though Miss Shen cannot enjoy the splendor and wealth like in the Crown Prince's residence, she can still live a satisfied and free life. Luo Shuiyan's heart was moved. Madame Su's words could be considered to have hit the bottom of her heart. She did not wish for the person that Shen Miao would marry to be rich and noble, but as long as the other party was upright, had good character, treated Shen Miao well and had a simple mouth, it would be better. Su Ming Feng was really a good candidate. Thinking about Luo Ling just now, Su Furen started to hesitate. Luo Ling was also not bad, but Shen Miao had to return to the Shaochun city, and with Su Ming Feng, Shen Miao could stay in the Ding capital. This time, due to various considerations in her heart, Luo Shuiyan did not reject Su Furen immediately and only said to think about it. After Su Furen left, Luo Shuiyan went to look for Shen Xan to discuss the matter. Of course, the most important thing was to see Shen Miao's intentions. Both of them were young talents, and as long as it was clear that there was no problem with Su Ming Feng, then Shen Miao would be able to take a look at her future husband. One did not know how this matter was passed to Shen Miao's ears, and when Luo Tan came to look for Shen Miao, she was overjoyed and said, "Biao youngest sister usually do not leave the house, but one did not think that fragrant wine does not fear deep alleys. You see, older brother Ling and young master Su came over, and there is also that crown prince. This is a total of 3 peach blossoms. In the eyes of others, I'm afraid they would die of envy." Shen Miao felt very helpless. Luo Ling actually proposed to marry her at this time. Of course, what Shen Miao did not expect was that Su Furen would actually come over and help Su Ming Feng to grasp this marriage. The matter of Su Furen wanting to marry into the Shen family had already made Shen Miao suspicious. One feared that Su Ming Feng wanted to investigate Xie Jingxing's identity. Now at this stage, the Su family did not hesitate to become enemies with the imperial family to marry her. Shen Miao felt that Su Ming Feng was a dangerous person. She thought that it was best to hand Su Ming Feng's matter over to Xie Jingxing to resolve, but Shen Miao glanced at the window. She did not know when this person would return. It was in troubled times, and yet he chose to disappear at this time. Without any reason, Shen Miao was somewhat dissatisfied in her heart. Luo Tan continued, "Previously, when we were hanging the red rope on the tree of cultivating destinies in Pu Tua Temple, the red rope that Biao youngest sister threw was at a good place. At that time I took a look, there were a lot of side branches extending towards the red rope. I am afraid they are the peach blossoms of today. I think these 3 peach blossoms are not enough, maybe there are 6, 7 or 8 more." Shen Miao said as she picked up the teacup, "Do you think that one is cutting window flowers and one can have as many as one want?" Luo Ling had a kind character, and the Su family was a wonderful family. It was already rare to find 2 people who were not afraid of becoming enemies with the imperial family, so how could there be others? But thinking of what that crazy Taoist said before, one feared that there would be difficulties with peach blossoms. One's heart could not help but jump. Could it be that the Taoist was right? Luo Tan continued to talk to herself. But Biao youngest sister's red rope finally landed on a high branch, and that high branch should be your final destination. One do not know who is my brother-in-law? Shen Miao took a sip of tea and absent-mindedly listened to Luo Tan's serious nonsense. It would be good if it was Prince Rue. Luo Tan clapped her hands. "Then I will rise with the tide and be Prince Rue's sister-in-law." Shen Miao was drinking tea and sprayed out a mouthful of tea and almost choked herself. But one did not expect that Luo Tan's words would come true. Shen Miao's peach blossoms did not come, but when they came it was astonishing. Merely 3 was indeed underestimated. Chapter 722. On the morning of the 2nd day, a special guest came to the Shen mansion. The person who came was not someone else but Feng and Ning. Ever since the matter of Shen Miao and Luo Tan being kidnapped, Feng and Ning really took the initiative to visit and apologize. Shin Xian and wife were forthright people, and moreover the matter at that time could not be blamed on Feng and Ning and could only be blamed on those robbers. Even though Shin Xian and wife expressed that it was not a big deal and Shin Miao and Luo Tan did not take it to heart, Feng and Ning seemed to be very guilty. Other than sending people to deliver some small things every 3 to 5 days, she did not visit again. Most likely it was because she felt that she did not have the face to face Shin Miao and Luo Tan. Luo Tan sent an invitation to Feng and Ning which Feng and Ning tactfully rejected. One did not expect that she would take the initiative to visit today. When Luo Tan heard that Feng and Ning came, she was very happy and pulled Shin Miao to the front hall. In the Ding capital, other than Shin Miao, Feng and Ning was Luo Tan's only friend. Out of the two of them, one was bold and straightforward while the other was forthright and uninhibited. They were like-minded. Because of the previous matter, Luo Tan had not seen Feng and Ning for a long time and was somewhat impatient. When they reached the main hall, one really saw Luo Shuiyan talking to Feng and Ning. Feng and Ning was wearing a moon-white short coat and skirt, her hair was combed into a bun and she wore pearl earrings and colored glass hairpin, looking much more quiet than usual. Luo Tan was the first to call out, "Feng and Ning," and ran over. But Shin Miao noticed that in the position beside Feng and Ning, there was a young man in his early 20s. This young man had delicate features and was wearing a green robe that fitted his body. He had a gentle demeanor and was very courteous. Seeing that Shin Miao was looking at him, he nodded his head to Shin Miao with a very thorough etiquette. There were some similarities between his brows and Feng and Ning's. Luo Tan then noticed that there was another person and said, "This is..." Luo Shuiyan was somewhat embarrassed as it was not in accordance with the rules to let two young ladies meet an outsider without rhyme or reason. But thinking of the reason why Feng and Ning came today, she felt somewhat awkward and one could not tell if she was happy or worried. It was Feng and Ning who took the initiative to say, "This is my older brother." Shin Miao suddenly understood. Only Feng and Ning and her eldest brother Feng Zixian were Feng Di's children. This must be her big brother Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian stood up and cupped his hands towards Shin Miao and Luo Tan. Shin Miao and Luo Tan quickly returned the greeting. Luo Tan looked at Feng Zixian with some doubts before looking at Feng and Ning and asked, "And Ning, did you not come here today to play with us?" If Feng and Ning was here to look for Shin Miao and Luo Tan, she would not have brought Feng Zixian over. However, this was also very surprising. He did not understand what Feng and Ning meant. Feng and Ning did not speak and only looked at Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian's expression was slightly embarrassed but he still took the initiative to speak. "Today one came over because one heard that the Ministry of War's Shin Chiu brother mentioned that your residence is looking for a son-in-law. This one is bold enough to recommend myself. Would young lady and Furin be magnanimous enough to forgive the rudeness?" Finishing, his face was slightly red as he avoided Luo Tan's probing gaze. Luo Shuiyan was a little embarrassed, but her eyes were filled with joy. Luo Tan's mouth was wide open, as she did not expect that the other party would come with such intentions. Shin Miao was surprised for a moment and was unable to describe the feeling in her heart. The words that this Feng Zixian said could be said to be very bold. But for those who came up to talk about matchmaking, they would either invite an Iceman to lobby or their own parents would come over to take a look. There were very few who came over personally. But even though he came over personally, he invited an elder to the side and did not lose his etiquette. If this was spread out, no one would say anything about Shin Miao's innocence. He was a person who understood the rules very well. Chapter 723. Shin Miao did not speak but Feng and Ning took the initiative to speak. She glanced at Shin Miao. The usually arrogant Feng and Ning had now put away the arrogance in her bones. Most likely she was still feeling guilty about the previous matter as her tone had some probing to please. She said, "We have heard of the rumors. Now the officials in the Ding capital have some fear but marrying into the Eastern Palace is not the best choice for you. It is better to marry my eldest brother. My eldest brother's literary and military strategies are not bad and his temperament is upright and outspoken. If you are to marry into our residence, I will help you and take care of everything." Feng and Ning had always had the temperament of not beating around the bush. These words were said honestly but it was really for Shin Miao's sake. Luo Shuiyan's expression softened a lot. Shin Miao asked, "Do Feng Furin and Master Feng know about this matter?" Feng and Ning hesitated for a moment before saying, "Initially father did not agree but after our persuasion, he followed our temperament. My father has a sharp mouth but a soft heart. It is only that his mouth is stubborn but he is very loyal. He will definitely not obstruct this matter." Shin Miao did not doubt this point. She only saw Feng and Ning's one-track mind and did not know how to play tricks, so she knew that Master Feng looked smart but was actually not so. She then looked at Feng Zixian and asked, "Does Gentleman Feng also feel that I am pitiful and want to lend a helping hand, that's why he married me?" When the words were said, everyone was surprised. Luo Shuiyan was surprised that when Shen Miao was facing a lifelong matter, there was no shyness or any other emotions at all. It was somewhat strange for her to treat it so calmly. Feng Zixian did not think that Shen Miao would ask this question so straightforwardly. He quickly recovered to his senses and said, "My younger sister had mentioned about young lady many times before. Zixian admires young lady's talent and temperament. This time it is only a coincidence and dare not say that one would lend a helping hand." Finishing, his face turned redder. Luo Tan laughed when she heard it, but Shen Miao was somewhat powerless. She did not know how Feng and Ning usually described herself to Feng Zixian that she even said, talent and temperament. Feng and Ning looked nervously at Shen Miao and asked, "My eldest brother is definitely better than the crown prince." Shen Miao almost laughed. If these words were heard by others, one would say that Feng and Ning was being disrespectful. But for Feng and Ning to say such words, it meant that she really placed her in her heart. Shen Miao then looked at Feng Zixian, who looked similar to Feng and Ning. His brows were magnanimous and should be an upright person. Shen Miao smiled, "One cannot decide my marriage in just a few short sentences. This is too unfair to me and unfair to young Master Feng." When Luo Shuiyan heard Shen Miao's words, she had some thoughts in her heart. Shen Miao's meaning was obviously that she had other thoughts about her marriage. But as a mother, she did not know what Shen Miao's intentions were. Shen Miao was not willing to marry into the Eastern Palace and did not seem to be interested in these young talents. That Luo Shuiyan was somewhat anxious. One thought that no one would dare to go against the imperial family and come to the Shen mansion to propose, but one did not expect that there would be three of them. Luo Ling, Su Ming Feng and Feng Zixian. Any one of them would be satisfactory. But Shen Miao did not see anything special about anyone. Feng and Ning said, "But if you are not anxious, then there is no time." These words were not false. Who knew when the imperial edict would come down? If it was in the past, naturally there would be a lot of time for Shen Miao to think clearly, but now that the imperial edict came down, there was no room for maneuver. Shen Miao waved her hands and was about to speak when she suddenly saw Jing Zhe rushing in from outside and said anxiously, "Young lady, people from the palace have arrived." Chapter 724. Luo Shuiyan's face instantly turned snow-white. Not daring to let others discover that the Feng siblings were here, Luo Shuiyan brought Shen Miao to the front hall to greet them. When the young eunuch finished speaking, one then knew that it was not an imperial edict but for Shen Miao to enter the palace alone tomorrow, as the Empress had something to say to Shen Miao. After the eunuch left, Luo Shuiyan's expression became extremely ugly. Although there was no imperial edict, it was not much better. Tomorrow Shen Miao would enter the palace alone, and if the matter of the imperial edict was raised at that time, it would not be easy for Shen Miao to refuse. Even if she didn't mention it, who knew what kind of threatening words the Empress would say? It was a sinister thing to let Shen Miao meet the Empress alone. Feng and Ning and Feng Zixian were somewhat worried, but Shen Miao advised them not to take it to heart. After the Feng siblings left, Luo Tan then asked, "Biao youngest sister, what to do now? Why don't we settle the marriage in the near future?" Marriage is not something that can be settled in one night. One still need to exchange the 8 characters and invite the ice person to the scene. There are many matters and it would be too late before tomorrow. Shen Miao said. Luo Tan was startled, "So there are so many things." She then said, "Youngest Biao sister knows everything clearly." Shen Miao paused for a moment. Naturally she was clear that in her previous life, she was filled with joy as she watched all these things being completed one by one and could not wait to marry into the residence of the person she admired earlier. However, he did not know that it was a tomb that devoured people without spitting out their bones. Luo Shuiyan looked at Shen Miao seriously. "Jiao Jiao, tell mother, among these few people, who do you like?" "It can't be considered as liking." Shen Miao smiled. "Choose the most suitable one. Mother, you don't have to be too anxious. It won't be too late to decide when I return from the palace tomorrow. Perhaps there will be more suitable people appearing." Luo Shuiyan was startled. Shen Miao was always indifferent to her marriage and did not seem to have any expectations towards her future husband, which made Luo Shuiyan's heart somewhat flustered. It was until after Shen Miao left that he muttered to himself, "Could it be that Jiao Jiao still has feelings for Prince Ding?" Shen Miao did not know of Luo Shuiyan's thoughts at all. She had already prepared for the worst, which was to perish together with the royal family. She had the determination to be a martyr, but she did not know if the Fu family had the intention to abandon their reputation. Even in the worst-case scenario, he couldn't lose hope. After all, he was still alive, right? As she was thinking like this, she glanced at the window and finally felt a bit irritated as she instructed Guyu, "Close the window more tightly. I want to rest." The crown prince had the intention to take Shen Miao as a secondary consort, and this led to the current officials not daring to have anything to do with the Shen family. This matter was in an uproar, and since it could reach the ears of the officials, naturally it would also reach the ears of the princes. In the residence of Prince Zhou, the two brothers, Prince Jing and Prince Zhou, were sitting at the table discussing the matter. "After fighting with Old Six for so long, I didn't expect the crown prince to take advantage of the loophole in the end." Prince Zhou drank the wine angrily. The crown prince usually looks honest, but now he is smart. Prince Jing was calmer than his older brother as he shook his head. "I think that this matter is not only the crown prince's idea but also Imperial Father's incitement. Imperial Father was originally dissatisfied with us and Prince Li, so the crown prince is the rightful one. Imperial Father is biased towards the crown prince, so he wanted to give the Shen family's military power to the crown prince to help. Imperial Father is also muddled with age." Prince Zhou sneered. "It is said that capable people do more work. That sickly crown prince did not even think about how many years he could use the Shen family's military power in his hands. Could it be that he would die before he could even warm it up and let others take advantage of it?" These words were said very viciously, almost having the meaning of cursing the crown prince to die early. Even so, Prince Zhou's tone was very jealous. One knew that if the crown prince obtained the Shen family's military power, his strength would increase greatly. Not only would he be able to compete with him and Prince Li, he might even surpass them by a lot. Chapter 725. The crown prince had a unique advantage in reputation, and with the addition of the Shen family's military power, the odds of winning were much higher. How could Prince Zhou not be anxious? In that case, it is better to let that little girl of the Shen family marry to number 9. It is better than the crown prince. Prince Zhou said in a deep voice. "Number 9. Prince Jing smiled meaningfully. "Fourth older brother, number 9 is not as simple as you and I think." "You mean the matter between Shen Wan and the king of Qin?" Prince Zhou was puzzled. "No matter how I look at it, it seems like someone is behind it. Even if it was true, it was only because he had the ambition. To be honest, among the 9 of us, who doesn't have ambitions for that position? Old Ninth didn't want to occupy anyone, he just wanted to be the only one. He had the ambition, but he also needed the ability to do so. He doesn't even participate much in the affairs of the imperial court. Which official is willing to follow him?" Fu Xiuyi and Shen Wan were very close in private and had an unclear relationship with the crown prince of Qin. This matter was heard by the other princes and they were vigilant against Fu Xiuyi, but at the end they did not put it in the first place. There was no other reason, as Fu Xiuyi did not participate in the court affairs for many years. Even if he had the ambition, he did not have the strength. He was just someone whose heart was higher than the heavens and his life was thinner than paper. Compared to him, there were more important enemies. Prince Jing shook his head. "Fourth older brother must not underestimate number 9. I always feel that he hides very deeply." Zhou Wang waved his hand impatiently. "Why do you keep mentioning 9th brother? I called you here today because I have something to discuss with you." Prince Zhou lowered his voice. "We cannot look on helplessly as the Shen family's military power falls into the crown prince's hands. If the crown prince obtained the military power, and now that the imperial heir grandson has been born and imperial father has the intention to support him, the chances of you and I will be even smaller. I have been fighting with Prince Li for so long, I do not want to be taken advantage of by the crown prince." "What does 4th brother mean?" "This marriage cannot be done." Prince Zhou smiled cruelly. "It would be best if we become enemies. There are thousands of ways to form enmity. Which one does 4th older brother want first?" Prince Jing asked. "Of course it's a blood feud." Prince Zhou put down the wine cup and said, "That Shen family's little girl also wholeheartedly thought of number 9 and would definitely not be willing to marry the crown prince. Since that's the case, we, the imperial family, will not force her to do anything against her will. Why don't we free her?" "It's not easy to make a move on Shen Miao." Prince Jing said, "The last time Shen Miao was kidnapped, Shen Xan had doubled the number of guards for her and it was heavily guarded. How can one take action?" Prince Zhou smiled. "If we can't do it outside, we can do it in the palace. He said proudly, "Once we enter the palace, no matter who the guards are, they all have to wait outside. Once we enter the palace, it's our world. I have inquired about it. Tomorrow the little girl of the Shin family will enter the palace alone. After she enters the palace to see the Empress, it will be our chance. It will be the easiest to make a move at that time." Prince Jing said, "It is easy to take action in the palace, but it is easy to be suspected when one investigates." Hehe, so this is a matter of killing two birds with one stone. Zhou Wang smiled. "What do you think about making it sound like old Six's work?" Prince Jing's eyes lit up. The two brothers and Prince Li's faction had been fighting for so many years and were evenly matched. If this time Shin Miao met with an accident in the palace, Shin Xen loved Shin Miao dearly and would definitely put the blame on the crown prince. If it was not that the crown prince had the intention to marry Shin Miao would not have met with an accident and the crown prince and the Shin family would be enemies. At the end, when it was found out that it was done by Prince Li would not be able to gain any benefits. To be able to take care of two strong enemies without using a single soldier, why not? Prince Jing smiled. Fourth older brother's idea is not bad, but it needs to be arranged carefully so that there will be more flaws. Men, invite my aides in. Coincidentally, when the residence of Prince Zhou was discussing about the assassination of Shin Miao tomorrow, the residence of Prince Li was also racking their brains over this matter. Chapter 726. King Li smiled at the two brothers in front of him and said, "What do you think?" Prince Xiang was a cautious and timid person, and when he saw Prince Li's smiling face, he could not help but shiver. King Li had always been a smiling tiger. On the surface he looked amiable, but over the years he had done many ruthless things. He said, "Isn't it too risky?" When King Qing heard that, he said, "What's so risky about that? One could not really let the crown prince marry the young lady of the Shin family and obtain the Shin family's military power for no reason. Sixth brother and Prince of Zhou have been fighting for so many years, but to no avail. That crown prince is sick, isn't he afraid that he won't have the life to spend it?" Prince Cheng had always been careless with his words and did not care about the consequences. His words were very presumptuous, but it was obviously in line with Prince Li's intentions. He said, "Eighth brother is right. It is indeed not my wish for the crown prince to obtain the Shin family's military power. If this marriage is successful, not only me, the two brothers will also be implicated, and that cannot be done. I propose to assassinate the young lady of the Shin family to prevent future troubles. Even though the young lady of the Shin family is innocent, but in the end she was implicated by the crown prince." Prince Li smiled as he talked about the assassination. Even though his words were full of sympathy for Shin Miao's innocence, there was no trace of pity in his tone. "But how are we going to put this matter on Prince Zhou?" Prince Xiang asked softly. Prince Zhou is usually presumptuous, and it is reasonable for him to do such a thing on impulse. Imperial Father already had some complaints about him, and when he wanted to support the crown prince, Imperial Father would only blame him for losing the military power of the Shin family because of Prince Zhou. Prince Li pondered. Killing two birds with one stone. "It's a good idea," Prince Qing said casually. "I support sixth brother." King Xiang did not speak, but it did not matter whether he spoke or not. He and King Qing were both followers of King Li. King Li's decision also represented the two of them. If they succeeded, they would naturally ascend to the heavens. If they failed, they would suffer misfortune together. This was what he had understood from the very beginning, to share weal and woe together. Sighing slightly in his heart, he could only hope that the assassination of Shin Miao tomorrow would proceed smoothly. The night was as dark as ink and the winter wind blew on his face. It was bitingly cold, as if someone was shaving his face with a knife. The water collected during the day turned into ice at night and was left outside the house to dry. By the next day the ice was stuck to the ground and could not be moved. In front of the window on the upper floor of the inn, the purple-clad young man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His brows were tightly furrowed and no one knew what he was thinking. A snow-white pigeon suddenly flew in from outside and landed on the windowsill in front of him. There was a thin layer of ice on its body. Flying outside in such cold weather, it was probably extraordinarily cold. Xie Jingxing removed a small silver tube from the pigeon's leg and threw the pigeon behind him. The charcoal fire was burning in the room, so it was warm and cozy. The pigeon tilted its body and flew to the desk in the room. It tilted its head and pecked the corn kernels in the small bowl on the desk. Xie Jingxing took out a small paper scroll from the silver tube and unfolded it to read. He threw it into the charcoal stove and turned it into ashes. Tai Yi walked in from the door and walked to Xie Jingxing's back. Master, the carriage and horses have been prepared and will depart for the capital tomorrow morning. Xie Jingxing replied, "And." Tai Yi however did not retreat and looked at Xie Jingxing's back, seemingly hesitating if he should speak or not. "Speak if you have something to say," Xie Jingxing said without turning his head back. Tai Yi was shocked and quickly said, "Master, there is news from the Ding capital that these few days Shin Xan is looking for a suitable young talent for 5th Shin young lady, and seemed to have the intention to marry." Xie Jingxing did not turn back. Tai Yi looked at the other person's back and did not know why, but he felt his scalp tingling. He also did not know if these words should be said or not, and his heart was complaining incessantly. Jiu Shu and Gao Yang from the Ding capital did not mention about this matter in the letter that was sent back. Now that Tai Yi mentioned it, in the future when Xie Jingxing blamed the both of them, it would seem that Tai Yi was the one instigating it. Chapter 727. But if he did not say it, the matter was of great importance. If Xie Jingxing were to find out about it, he would have made a big mistake and he would not need to be a secret guard anymore. Perhaps he would even lose his life. Between loyalty and his life, Tai Yi very decisively chose the latter. He said, "Su family Su Ming Feng, Luo families Luo Ling and the eldest son of the Feng family Feng Zixian, have all visited the Shin mansion." Feng Zixian? The youth turned and stared at Tai Yi's eyes. Why did Feng Zixian visit? Tai Yi's back turned cold and braced himself to say, "Because Shin Xan is anxious to marry off 5th Shin young lady, as there is news from the palace that the crown prince has the intention to marry 5th Shin young lady as a secondary consort. The Shin family do not wish for 5th Shin young lady to marry into the eastern palace and wanted to marry 5th Shin young lady off before the imperial edict comes down. The Feng family's young lady and 5th Shin young lady are good friends and specially looked for older brother to come over to solve the problem." "When did the news spread from the palace?" Xie Jingxing slowly asked, but his voice seemed to be coated with a layer of ice. Tai Yi did not dare to look at Xie Jingxing's eyes and his head was almost on the ground as he said, 5 days ago. "The news from 5 days ago only arrived now?" Xie Jingxing did not get angry but laughed instead. There seemed to be anger in his beautiful peach blossom eyes as he said, "This prince do not know when did one raise a group of trash." The air in the room suddenly turned cold and seemed to be colder than outside. Even with the warm charcoal fire, the pigeon on the table made a goo sound and retracted its head back into its feathers. Tai Yi wanted to cry but had no tears, but he still had to finish the words that he did not say. Today the palace sent a message to the Shin family. Tomorrow 5th Shin young lady will enter the palace alone as the Empress has something to discuss with her. Before the words were finished, one saw that purple-clad youth's figure flashed and was already at the door. He casually pulled the fox fur coat that was hanging and said coldly, "Prepare the horse." Tai Yi was startled. "Master, is it not tomorrow morning?" Xie Jingxing coldly swept a glance at him. Tai Yi shivered and did not dare to say anything else. This night, the wind and snow intertwined and the cold air penetrated the bones. Some people tossed and turned on the warm bed and were unable to sleep, while some people were in the magnificent residence discussing murderous plots. Some people naturally lived in the imperial palace, and there were also some people who rode their precious horses thousands of miles away. Some rejoice, some grieve, some worry, some triumph. The vast rivers and mountains of Mingqi were picturesque, and the Ding capital was filled with songs and dances to celebrate peace. At the end of the year, there were cheers and laughter everywhere, but no one could see the turbulence under the calm lake. In one of the rooms in Prince Ding's residence, there was someone playing chess with himself. The man was dressed in a green robe. The chessboard on the table was in a mess. The white characters and black pieces were intertwined on the board. It looked extremely complicated. With every step he took, he had to think for a long time. It was as if he had reached a bottleneck, but he just couldn't bring himself to play the black piece in his hand. The flame of the lamp swayed slightly and was almost extinguished. He got up and refilled the lamp oil, and the room became bright again. This man's eyes were bright and clear, and he had the air of a modest gentleman. It was as if he was proud and unyielding in his heart. However, there was sadness in his eyes that could not be dispersed. This person was Pei Lang. Pei Lang looked at the snowy night outside the window and sighed deeply. Fu Xiuyi's move in chess was indeed not bad. Shifting the trouble to the east, no matter if it was a success or failure, it had nothing to do with Fu Xiuyi. No matter what the result was, whether it was the crown prince being unlucky, Prince Zhou or Prince Li being unlucky, or the Shin family being unlucky, it was a good thing for Fu Xiuyi. In this kind of chess game, Shen Miao had almost no other path to take. Even if there was, it would be the last resort. With this game, Fu Xiuyi would definitely win and not lose. Pei Lang was somewhat worried for Shen Miao. He also did not know why he was worried for Shen Miao. If Shen Miao died, then he would be able to follow Fu Xiuyi. Fu Xiuyi was very reliant on him, and if he did not see wrongly, this person had the talent to become an emperor. In the future, his chickens and dogs would ascend to heaven and he would be able to enjoy endless riches and glory. He would also be able to better protect Luing in secret. But he was still not willing for Shen Miao to lose. These days Fu Xiuyi suspected that there was a traitor in the residence and doubled the guards in Prince Ding's residence. Even a fly would not be able to fly in, not to mention the news out. He had no way to communicate with Shen Miao through letters and could only be anxious in the dark. Hearing that Shen Miao was going to make a trip to the palace alone tomorrow, it just so happened that he was also going to the palace tomorrow. Even though he was Fu Xiuyi's aide, he was also a small official. Shen Miao had no way out, and at the end of the road, would there be any other way out? After a moment, Pei Lang looked at the chess game in front of him. It was already a dilemma and there was no need to continue playing. One of his hands was placed on the corner of the table and suddenly flipped it. With just a light flip, the entire board of chess pieces instantly fell to the ground, big and small, making a crisp sound. The ground was a mess. Nothing could be seen from the original situation. Chapter 728. Early the next morning, Shen Miao entered the palace. Luo Shuiyin and Shen Exan were worried about her and let her bring a lot of guards. But the guards of the Shen residence could not follow Shen Miao at all times, and when they reached the palace doors, they had to wait outside. Before Shen Miao left, she wore all the big and small jewelry that Xie Jingxing gave her. Regarding the Ming-Chi's imperial palace, she never feared to speculate with the greatest malice and was only afraid that there would be an accident, so she was fully prepared. When she reached the palace doors, Gu Yu and the rest were waiting outside with the guards, and Shen Miao was led by a palace maid towards Kuaning Palace. Along the way, the palace maid felt somewhat strange. The path from the palace doors to Kuaning Palace was not simple, and one had to go through several corridors and some gardens, but Shen Miao was very familiar with the path. She did not even need the palace maid to remind her as she lifted her feet to walk over the old and loose steps. The palace maid's heart was suspicious. Could it be that Shen Miao came to Kuaning Palace once and remembered this path so well that she did not make any mistakes? She did not expect that this Kuaning Palace was the place where Shen Miao lived in her previous life, and every grass and tree was engraved in her heart. Thus, in the face of the grand furnishings and exquisite displays, she turned a blind eye to them. If one looked carefully, one could see a flash of disgust in Shen Miao's eyes. Others did not know about these. When they reached Kuaning Palace, the palace maid was combing the Empress' hair. Shen Miao waited for a while before the Empress let her in. Today Consort Dong Shu did not come over, and there was only the Empress as a master. She was wearing some formal court attire and had a 9 phoenix hairpin on her head. Her makeup was expensive and there was a sense of oppression coming from her. Shen Miao took a look and understood in her heart. Did this really think that she was a young lady who was not familiar with worldly affairs and wanted to use the imperial family's prestige to threaten her? Force her to take the initiative to let go? No wonder Shen Miao deliberately sent Luo Shuiyin away. If Shen Miao was really a 16-year-old young lady, dressed so formally in front of the Empress and with a few vague threatening words, she would feel that she was alone and helpless. Her heart would be flustered and she would not know what happened. But how was Shen Miao a young lady? The person in front of her was the Empress. She was the Empress in her previous life. She was more knowledgeable, arrogant, and suffered more hardships than this one. So, she really didn't care about the name of a fox borrowing the tiger's might. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down and a humble smile surfaced. The Empress slowly frowned. Shen Miao's reaction was somewhat different from what she thought. She did not know if Shen Miao was deliberately pretending to be confused or was originally stupid. Her eyes landed on the bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist and slightly narrowed her eyes before smiling. This bracelet is of good quality. Come forward and let Bengong take a look. Shen Miao went forward as instructed and the Empress held Shen Miao's hands. The bracelet was made of a rare jade material from an unknown place. It was bright green and extremely smooth. Just as she was about to praise a few words, she heard Shen Miao laughing, replying to your ladyship, this official's daughter's hairpin, necklace and earrings are also very good looking. The Empress was taken aback and looked at it seriously. Her mouth couldn't help but twitch. The cat's eye hairpin was matched with pearl earrings, and the pearl earrings were matched with an amber necklace. As for the bracelets and miscellaneous jewelry, there was no need to mention them. They were clearly all exquisite and valuable jewelry, so why did she feel so awkward stuffing them all onto her body? The Empress suddenly did not want to praise Shen Miao's jewelry and even lost interest in the bracelet. Her heart was filled with indescribable contempt. Initially it was said that the young lady of the Shen family was an idiot who only knew about gold and silver. Afterwards it was thought that she had changed her appearance, but looking at it today, she was not the same as before. Once she thought of marrying Shen Miao to the crown prince, the Empress was not happy. If it was not because the Shen family's military power could help the crown prince, the Empress would not be willing to let such a vulgar female marry into the Eastern Palace. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.